Hello and welcome to the Shea Hates Everything Podcast, where two brothers argue about video games and other shit that matters. My name is Shea, and today I hate that every new game is now a Souls-like.
And my name is Kyle, and today I hate that I'm 30 now.
I don't know what you mean. It's October of 2019. This is the next episode of the podcast.
Oh, thank God I'm still 27.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what you mean that you're 30 years old. I certainly am not almost 35 at this point. I'm still in my early 30s. I just had a baby girl. Life is good.
Yeah, just had her.
Right. I've been hearing this like rumblings of some new sort of, I don't know if it's a swine flu or a bird flu or something that's been happening, like a bat flu almost. Have you heard about this?
I've never really given any credence to that kind of stuff. I feel like science always comes through and everyone believes it and follows guidelines, and so everyone's okay.
Oh, yeah, you're probably right. I'm sure it'll amount to nothing, and everything will be good with the world. No, the world is bad. It is the year 2023 by the time this podcast is going up. Yeah, and the podcast is back. That's something. So we're making a podcast in 2023 that we stopped making in September of 2019. But we're back.
Yeah, and you know what? Nothing's changed. We are still, our life circumstances are identical to what they were 3 years and 3 months ago. Not that I'm counting. Nothing has changed.
Correct.
And I think we can just cover the games news of the day and move on.
Yes, nothing meaningful has changed that would impact how we play games and what games we play and how we generally approach gaming in life with the larger world as it is.
All right, this bit's too long. We gotta end it. We gotta end it and get to the real thing.
Okay, let's get to the real thing. So I do want to talk through the past 3 years.
Yeah.
In a small amount of time. We're not devoting the whole episode to catching up on 3 years. But I think one thing that's interesting to talk through is how time has changed our gaming habits. Like there are many people listening to this podcast that have not listened to a previous episode of the podcast, but there are also probably many people listening to this that have. I mean, we did the podcast for like 2 years, 58 episodes, 59 episodes.
Yeah. Well, this
including
is
episode
59.
0. Yeah. So I feel like it is interesting to think about what has changed for us. Because I know, like, we stopped doing the podcast in September of 2019 because I had a daughter in March, and that completely messed up. Well, messed up is like the wrong framing. It wasn't like a negative experience.
Yeah,
but it changed.
But she's getting close enough to being old enough to understand what that means when you say that. So
yes, that is true.
Let's be nice.
Yes, but really what it is having a kid completely changed how I was able to consume media. Video games and movies and watching TV and all of that kind of stuff. Like, my time became so much smaller, and then it just became so much harder to do this podcast, to write on my website on top of my fatherly duties and on top of even trying to play games. I know, I mean, if you go back and listen to the several episodes between April and September, you'll notice like our uploading schedule became a little bit messed up. We would miss a week, miss 2 weeks. I had way fewer games I was playing. And then my computer broke in September, and that was kind of like the final straw. And it sucked, and it was just like, I just can't commit the time to this. We just can't keep doing it. And it was a bummer. It was a lot of fun to do. But I guess the biggest thing that I wanted to bring it back because I had another kid who is now over a year old. My daughter is almost 4, and I have said, like, F it. Screw it. Let's just do the podcast anyway. Because it was fun. It was a fun thing to do. And it was fun to have a means to talk to you and argue with you about video game stuff. And so why the hell not, man? Like, why not do it anyway? We are going to be changing the way that we do the podcast. Instead of every other week, we're going to be uploading on the first Monday of every month. We're going to be a monthly cadence, making it much easier for me and for us to, at least for me, like to actually have games to talk about, give myself a month to play through stuff. And then, you know, more news will be happening. We'll be less focused on every bit and piece of news that happens and more the big things that happen. We're also going to stay more tightly aligned to video games. So in the past, we kind of talked about the full gamut of media, and that was fun to do, but it's also like, again, it's just too much stuff. And going monthly, it'd be a 5-hour podcast if we tried to talk about everything that possibly happened.
Right.
So sticking closer to video games, closer to video game news, big hitter things, gives us more time to talk about the stuff that matters and more time to talk about specific topics. For example, this month, like, we're going to be doing our 2022 rewind leading up to sort of a Game of the Year conversation. We're not going to have, like, a Shea Hates Everything podcast official Game of the Year because there are 2 of us, and that would be arbitrary and stupid. But, like, yeah. we can lead up to what were our favorite games from everything that we played. So we're going to do sort of that look back retrospective, and then we're also going to do, you know, it's the 1st of January, well, the first week of January. Let's look ahead to this year. Let's look ahead to the future. What are the things we're excited about? You know, we haven't talked about this in a previous episode, so this is all brand new to talk about all the cool games, tons of stuff announced at Game Awards, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I think like to recap for me, over the past 3 years, not just like being a dad and having kids and all that stuff changing the way that I played games, but if we think back to, you know, the actual pandemic that happened, the actual virus that happened for 2+ years, like I spent most of the year 2020 replaying old nostalgic experiences because I wanted that comfort zone. And I know you kind of did some of that too. Like almost exclusively that year, I played old video games. Like I replayed the entire, old is a kind of a weird, I played games that I've played before. Played the entire Uncharted series, all the BioShock games. I replayed Final Fantasy 10, 10-2, 12, and 13 over the past 2 years. Like, I went hard on replaying old favorites, and so I've ended up being way behind on a lot of games. And sort of like now my new cadence is like, the big zeitgeist things that come out, I play when they come out, but a lot of my other time is spent like, hey, this year I played a lot of like smaller indie games from 2020, from 2021, because it's not as relevant. Like I don't need to play those when they come out. But like I played Horizon Forbidden West. I played God of War. I played Stray. Like big zeitgeist games, I want to be a part of that conversation. But it's like freed up my mind so much to not feeling the obligation to exclusively play new shit. And I'm actually working through a backlog, which is something that, as we gamers know, is not very easy to do, to actually commit time to a backlog. But this has freed me up. I mean, it's not making my backlog any shorter, realistically, because now my 2021 backlog is just going to be replaced by 2022 games.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's still, like, it's there's so much less pressure in what I play and the time that I spend playing it, and it's really made gaming actually fun for me again. So what about you? Like, hey, it's been 3 years since we've officially on the podcast talked. It's not like you and I, hey, what have you been up to? We haven't talked for 3 years, Kyle.
It's been crazy. You know, I didn't want to talk to you through a mask. So
yes.
So we just haven't talked.
Right. You need a mask to text.
Exactly. So it's it's been strangely fortuitous and pleasant few years for me, because like shortly after COVID hit, I quit my job that I was like super stressed out and overworked, and I went back to school and I got my degree and I got a big boy job, and I recently made a transition to a new job in the same field, and I am loving this new job and it's fantastic, and you know it's afforded me the opportunity to spend more time doing the things that I love, which includes playing games, because I now work at home, which is amazing.
It sure is.
It's just incredible. I mean, I can't even imagine what kind of a boon that is for you to be able to work from home with 2 children. I'm sure also very taxing in its own way, but also, you know, gives you more opportunity for you have to spend less time pretending you're working. like I would go into the office, and 5 out of the 8 hours of my day was me at my desk staring at my phone, hoping my supervisor doesn't walk through the door and walk past my cubicle and be like, "What the hell, you're on the phone, why aren't you doing this thing?" Because we both know I'm only not doing things because there's nothing to do in this moment. I've already done my day's work. Now I just do that from home, and nobody gives a shit because I got my stuff done.
So Kyle won't be sending this podcast to his boss. Good to know.
Well, no, like everybody at the company is doing that, like you stay engaged, you stay reachable, and you do things as they come up. You stay on top of it. You be a freaking adult, and you schedule your time out appropriately. And, as long as you don't screw that up, you get some grace from your fellow coworkers and your managers, and people trust you. It's an amazing thing
to be treated
trusted.
like an adult.
Yeah, to be treated like an adult, to be trusted, and to be compensated fairly. It is an amazing thing that I'm very privileged to be able to have a job like this. So in terms of how that has affected the way I spend my time playing games, I have just played so many video games in the past few years. I've already had the roller coaster of I'm sick of all video games. I had that decline, and now I feel like I'm kind of settling back into an incline again, kind of ramping up my interest in different kinds of games again. But
that's
like
so funny.
For a little while there, and obviously we didn't get to talk about it on the podcast because we're just not going back to it. But for a little while there, I was really struggling to derive the same kinds of enjoyment out of the nostalgic experiences that you were talking about going back to. I was going back to that well, and it wasn't providing me the comfort that maybe it was providing you. And that was, I think, more reflective of just how stressed out I was because of COVID, because of the changing times and things, but also I was trying to finish out this degree that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to finish, and trying to figure out where my spot in the world and the workforce was going to be going forward. So I think it's more reflective of those stresses. But I guess that's been my big takeaway from the past few years, is that my circumstances outside of my day-to-day, the larger circumstances of my life have a dramatic effect on my ability to engage with certain genres and certain types of games, and especially games that I have previously played, like going back for nostalgia. It really affects my ability to enjoy those things, and to also, so it's kind of like I get stuck in limbo when I'm really stressed out. Like I can't go back to the old stuff because it doesn't hold the same joy, and that's disappointing in its own way, although natural. But also, I don't have the energy or the wherewithal to branch out and try something new. So I just end up playing, like, I will play a Minecraft mod pack and 7 Days to Die for like
the same game that you've been playing forever.
Yes, I have 1,600 hours in 7 Days to Die on Steam, and that doesn't count any of my modded playthroughs. And I can't even begin to calculate the hours I have in Minecraft over all the mod packs and worlds and stuff. So it's like, I just keep going back to those things. But I'm finally breaking out of that cycle. This holiday season has helped with that, and the new job obviously has helped a lot with that. And I'm hoping this podcast helps motivate me to do that as well.
It's a good forcing function to like not necessarily, oh, we got to play the newest hottest stuff, like that pressure isn't there, but to be trying new things for content. As the kids say.
Sometimes
to have more interesting stuff to talk about.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a good reason to do something. You and I being able to talk about it, and it being an excuse for you and I to keep in contact and have conversations that excite us is a very good reason. So
I feel like I went through very similar things as you, but kind of like with different outcomes. Because obviously the nostalgic trip in 2020, 2021 did fill that need for me.
Right.
But then like coming out of COVID, like re-entering society in a way, like I kind of moved past that nostalgic experience, but I had a hard time getting excited about new things. And like to your point, like having the motivation to actually sit down and press play on a new game.
Yeah.
It always felt so intimidating. And so I like dabbled this year. And like as we talked through games that we played, I played like maybe 8 2022 games. I played a lot of older stuff, but like over the summer months, I put like another 300 hours into a new Skyrim playthrough. Like to your point of like going back to 7 Days to Die,
yes.
that's Skyrim for me. And it was God of War Ragnarok that got me out of that, because that was like literally the only game that I was excited about this year, like with legitimate, anticipation and hype for it. And that I feel like has completely opened me playing new games again, and like not being afraid to just, when my kids are taking a nap and I've got an hour and a half, every Saturday afternoon, to just sit down and play something new. There's no obligation. If I don't like it, I'll just stop playing it. And that's been so hard for me in the past. So it's like, it's finding the right balance. But I think there's a larger conversation about a general malaise towards new games for a variety of reasons. One, like games continue to launch super broken. A lot of games launch and are really underwhelming and disappointing. Sequel fatigue, genre fatigue. Like there's myriad reasons why it's less exciting in the gaming space currently. And COVID is a big part of that. Like the last 2 years and even into this year, even into early next year, the release cadence is so much slower than it has been in the past.
Totally.
And even the games
quality
that do
of
come
products
out,
are,
it's way lower. It's
Yeah.
way lower. And like that is not the fault of the developers making the games.
No, it's not that they aren't working hard. It's they had to adapt to changing circumstances, and there are knock-on effects of that. And that's like, and anytime there's a new technology or a shift in the workforce or anything like that, there's always going to be pain points in a period of adjustment. And that's the thing that we went through is how do we make games virtually? And it's not going to work for everyone, unfortunately. Just like this isn't as large of a change as like when how within the past 20 to 30 years a lot of manufacturing jobs have moved out of the country, and people who work those assembly lines are having to learn new skills and move into new fields, into different job markets. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone has the skills necessary or are adaptable enough or have the circumstances that allow them
or the desire
to do that. Or the desire, right.
Well, and I mean, everybody's figuring out new ways of working virtually and from home, and technology continues to march forward in all different ways, like in the way that we communicate and interact with one another, on top of how people make games and new consoles and all that stuff too, all at the same time makes it so hard. But yeah, I mean, plenty of stuff that we can dive deep on. I do want to make sure we are able to do kind of our 2022 recap. That's sort of like the main crux of this episode. Before we dive in, I would be remiss if I didn't ingrain in myself or like reteach myself how to properly promote this shit. So I want to make sure we promo where you can connect with us. So SheaHatesEverything.com is where you can go to read a lot of stuff. It's been a while since I've wrote on that website regularly, but I'm hoping that this podcast serves as a good excuse to get back to it. Obviously find us on Twitter. I'm at Shea_Castle, SHEA_CASTLE. And Kyle is at the DrumKid92. Twitter is a shit show, but for right now, we're both on there.
Yes. And I stream sometimes on Twitch with the same handle. So, feel free to hop and chat sometime. Right now, I'm experiencing a terrible bout of hard drive failure. So I'm waiting until I get my new drive to fix everything, and then I'll be able to stream again. So it'll probably be another week or so. But
I thought you were going to say like a terrible bout of like some
diarrhea,
disease. Like facing a terrible bout of rickets, so I just haven't been
I've got the shingles, so I haven't been streaming. I'm like a leper.
But also like one of the things that we used to do that I would love to continue doing is taking emails and topics for our conversation, or like feedback on specific games we're talking about, opinions, things like that. So you can always email us at info@SheaHatesEverything.com, and that'll find me. And then we're everywhere you get your podcasts. Wherever you're listening to us, you can find us there. obviously.
We had an exciting development today.
Yeah, we're officially on Spotify. We formerly were not, and now we is. So you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Samsung Podcasts, which is a thing apparently for Samsung phones. So all you Samsung users out there, the 6 of you, you can find us on your podcast service as well.
I had no idea that was a thing.
Oh, hell yeah, man. As I was resubscribing to my podcast hosting service for the purposes of this, and they were like, hey, do you want to connect to Samsung Podcasts? And I was like, yeah, why not? Let's do it.
Well, no, I don't, but yes, I probably should.
I will.
For the one person who will listen to us on that service, yes.
Right, yeah.
So you know what? If you're listening to us on Samsung, email us at info@sheahateseverything.com. And let us know how grateful you are that we are on Samsung Podcast.
But also, like, you can get Spotify on a Samsung phone
also
or Google Podcasts. Yeah. But hey, maybe you have an old, like, what are the Razr flip phones? Can you get podcasts on those phones?
Are you talking down about the Razr? That was my favorite phone I've ever had.
Absolutely not. Great phone. I only mean, like, if someone is still using an old phone, maybe they can't get Spotify on it.
If I could
all the grandparents out there listening to the podcast, maybe they can find us on Samsung Podcast.
What's the there's a brand of phone specifically for the elderly, like they have giant text fonts and stuff on the screens. What is that? I forget the name of that.
I don't know the brand, but I definitely know what you mean, where the buttons are like they're big as a thumb. Yes.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But yeah, hey man, I'm excited to be doing this again before we dive in. I'm not saying that this podcast made the world a better place. I am saying that the world has gotten worse every single day since we stopped doing the podcast. So let's see what happens.
So if things are
maybe 2023, like if this year ends up being better, you know who you have to thank for it.
You know, if January 2nd rolls around, the day this is posted, and something good happens, it's because of us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
If something bad happens, that's we are not affiliated with that bad thing that happened. But anything good that happens, I believe you can attribute to us.
We would like all of the credit with none of the blame.
Correct.
To quote the great Michael Scott. Okay, what do you say we talk about last year? Does that sound fun to do? Let's do that. So basically the way that we're breaking this down is we're just going to go month by month in 2022 and talk about the video games that we played. We're not going to have as in-depth a conversation about each one as we would on a normal episode because there are like 40 games on this list. But just as a way of kind of catching up, letting people know where we are, what we've been doing. And as well as for all the new listeners, if you don't want to listen, if you go all the way back to like 2017 in episode 1, we do a like, here's our favorite things podcast episode.
Yeah.
This is another good way of kind of getting a vibe for the stuff that we're into. So in January, Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Arceus? I think it's
I'm
Arceus.
Pretty sure it's I'm pretty sure that it's Arceus.
I think it's Arceus.
I'm definitely sure that it is Arceus because Arceus sounds real dumb, and it sounded dumb when I said it, but I kind of had to double down, and then I realized that this is going online, and if I'm wrong, like it's really easy to disprove me. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Arceus.
Email us.
You really think it's Arceus?
SheaHatesEverything.com. I believe it's Arceus.
No, I said Arceus. You said Arceus.
No, you said Arceus.
That is not correct.
You are going to feel so stupid when you replay this. I'm
just gaslighting the shit out of you is what I'm doing.
Okay, thank God.
It just didn't work. So Pokemon Legends Arceus, I know when I saw this video game, I said, this looks like a really good idea. I have zero faith in them making this a good video game. So what did you think of this video game?
Well, now that you've set it up in a very impartial manner,
that is only a description of why I did not play Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Sure. So it's fascinating because it really throws your typical Pokemon formula on its head. It has those notes of Gold and Silver, where like you're running around, you're collecting the apricots and crafting your own Pokeballs and stuff.
Okay.
It's got like you're crafting things and all these different types of balls for different situations and stuff that maybe in the main Pokemon games isn't nearly as necessary. Like those different balls are still in there, but you don't really need them.
You don't really need them.
Throw a million Pokeballs at a Pokemon, you'll catch it eventually. In this one, that stuff feels more important. Like those, they just kind of ramp up all of the status effects and the weakness and vulnerability systems in a way that I think is kind of exciting. Also, like roaming around the open world and encountering Pokemon is fun. Like you get into an encounter and fight the Pokemon right where it is, where it's running around. There's a weird thing where the Pokemon attack you, as a person, which is frightening and strange. Like you'll be running around and it'll like try to engage you in a battle. And you're like, I'm not going to throw out my Pokemon. I'm trying to go over there now. And it's like, fuck you. I'm going to electrocute you. Yeah. Like a person. I'm like, if you have a bad heart valve, you're dead because this Pokemon is going to electrocute you. But you have a dodge roll, so I guess it's fine.
Every game's got to have a dodge roll, man.
You got to have a dodge roll. It's just really weird. Like the balance. They throw the balance out of whack, and not always in a good way, because there are a lot of hidden values. Like there have always been the EV and IV values that are hidden in Pokemon, like certain ways to train them to min-max certain values. This is all for competitive, basically. Sure. Like you can train Pokemon a certain way by fighting certain other Pokemon to like make their hidden stats better or whatever. This feels like they're introducing more hidden values, and not necessarily in a, well, of course it's not a fun way because that's never fun. But like there are quests tied to it. Like there are side quests where it's like, I want you to catch, a Buizel. I'm making up the name. I don't remember the name of the Pokemon. A Buizel that's 8 feet tall or whatever, or like it has to be 5 foot 8 inches or taller in order to qualify for being a large version of this Buizel. But when you're running around the world, that Buizel looks like another fucking Buizel. All the Buizels look the same, bro. They're all the same Buizel.
You just have to catch 60 of them and hope that one of them's an 8-footer.
Exactly. You gotta hope one of them's got an 8-foot dong, and you're like, I can't see the Buizel dongs. They all look the same.
Hey, we are all used to online dating. Everybody lies like on those sites, and when you meet them, they're never the same. So it's tough when you're out there trying to find the right Buizel for you.
Yeah,
you really gotta just get all of them. You gotta swipe right on every single Buizel, and eventually you'll find the 8-footer.
Yeah, you're gonna get catfished by a lot of Buizels before you get there.
Right, of course.
So, but there are a lot of really interesting things that the games do. It's like there's some of that BS stuff, and that's what I feel like is kind of, that has, to me, that summarizes Pokemon for the past like 15 years. It's some interesting evolutions on the concept and some themes with some baffling design decisions and a lot of unnecessary complexity and user experience issues. And that's kind of what this game is. There are some smart, like you can fast travel. It doesn't really explain very well how to do it, but you can do it. And once you figure it out, that's like your primary mode of getting around. It doesn't have and it's weird because it's kind of like supposed to be this new, like no one's ever made a Pokedex before, so you're kind of the first person doing it and feeling out the process. But so I guess like some of that hidden data, whatever thing kind of makes a little bit of sense because there's like a sense of randomness and exploration to, the kinds of Pokemon that you're encountering. But like there's like a mystery around it a little bit. But I don't think that ends up being a fun part of the game. I think it's kind of what it comes down to. There's a cool combat mechanic where you can do like your normal attacks, but you can do them like extra fast for a little less damage to make sure you get the hit in first, or you can like take a little speed penalty and maybe hit second, but you're going to do more damage with it, and stuff like that. Like so like the same attack has a few different ways in which you can utilize it in battle that I really liked. I thought that brought just a little extra layer of complexity and ownership over It made me feel it feels closer on delivering that promise of the original show to the player. Like, like you really feel like you're giving your Pokemon very specific directions in battle, and it's acting on those things instead of just choosing from 4 moves. This feels like there's that extra layer of strategery layered on top of it. I think makes for more interesting combat. It's just got all this extra stuff in the margins that I think was a little frustrating for me, and that's why I didn't get crazy far into it. There's more to talk about with that, but I realize I've been rambling on for several minutes about one game, and we have a lot of games to get to. But that's was my experience with Arceus.
Well, and one thing that makes it tough, because I know neither of us have played whatever the hell the new ones are, Scarlet and Violet.
Right.
It's a game that I will eventually get around to. It's primarily I said no to it just because of when it launched, it has all these technical issues.
That's where I'm at with it.
I'm not willing to sign up for that.
Right. I'm waiting until they make a better version of it.
I do know that they tried to implement a lot of the things from Arceus into this. Like, the Sword and Shield had the wild area, which I thought was like a good step, but like they needed to go way farther. And it seems like they have in Scarlet and Violet. So I am curious to see how that kind of like through line works. But yeah, I mean, one of the toughest things about Pokemon is just every new game that comes out has some sort of innovation. And a lot of times that innovation feels needless, not what I want out of it. And the Pokemon diehards, like, yeah, man, I'm sure a lot of people love designing a fucking hat to put on their Pikachu, but like, I don't want to play that mini game more than one time, right? Like that.
I don't even want to play that mini game once, but they're gonna make you do it.
Yeah, so I don't know. It is what it is, but I know for Arceus, like it was mostly, it looked fugly as hell,
dude. It's one of the ugliest games I've ever.
Crazy.
It looks worse than the GameCube game.
Yeah, but it was more so just like the combination of ideas just didn't seem all that appealing to me. Like it felt like it was like a proof of concept more than a real video game.
Yeah, and I think in the final product, I think that kind of bears itself out. It definitely feels that way.
Yeah. Well, all right. Moving into February, obviously there are tons of big games that come out that we didn't play. We're not going to talk about. Maybe we'll get back to them eventually. But
right.
In February, Horizon Forbidden West was my big game. That was my first big game of the year that I actually committed to playing when it came out. I got the Platinum Trophy in that game, which like I didn't originally intend on doing.
Good
it just
Lord.
kind of like fell into my lap where I just had a bunch of the random collectathon things to do and a couple of like side mission things. And a lot of the side stuff that seemed tedious, I didn't have to do to get the platinum, which makes it so much more
that's good.
appealing to do. Because like it has, it has like an arena sort of thing where they throw a shit ton of like the uber hard enemies at you and you have to beat them with certain types of weapons or certain types of ammo, and I did not want to engage with that at all, and thankfully I didn't have to more than a couple things.
Okay.
But I think like on the whole, I'm trying to remember, did you play through the first game?
I did not beat it.
Okay.
I got maybe like 3/4 of the way through.
I think what's hard for me about this game, like when I look back on it, because it's been almost a year since I've played it, I have positive feelings toward the game. It's a good video game, but when I was playing it, I felt this overwhelming sense of disappointment in it because of the lack of innovation. Like we were just talking about Pokemon games, like how they always throw these random little things on top that are new, but the core of the game, there's been zero innovation until Arceus. And then they went right back to the old well with Scarlet and Violet. And it feels that way with Forbidden West. Obviously, it's not the same level of impact because it's just one additional game. But there have been so many big open world games since Zero Dawn that I wish they would have taken more lessons from. Like the easiest example is Breath of the Wild, because that game released at the same time and completely overshadowed Horizon.
Right. I was really hoping
Zero
Breath
Dawn,
of the Wild 2 would release like a month after. Oh man, that would have been so good.
But like the biggest thing that they added in Forbidden West that they took from Breath of the Wild is the glider. Like there's like straight up a glider in this game. And it's great. It's a good fucking glider and it's super convenient. But like the rest of the game feels the same. There's no interesting change in how the missions are structured, in the gameplay. Like, I ironically had replayed Ghost of Tsushima, the director's cut, shortly before playing Forbidden West, and I got the fucking platinum in Ghost of Tsushima director's cut as well. I got the platinum in the original game, and then I went and platinum the thing again. I only wanted to replay through the story in that game so I could go do the Ishii Island DLC. And then I ended up doing literally everything in that game yet again. That game's incredible.
That's crazy. That's a lot of, like,
it is.
Go here, do this open world game after another.
Yeah, but that's part of what was so frustrating about Forbidden West is one of the huge things that I loved about Ghost of Tsushima is how it helps you navigate the world.
Yeah.
Like the golden, birds or whatever that take you to hidden secrets.
Right.
The little side missions with the fox dens where you just have to follow the fox, using the wind to guide you towards an objective versus just putting a giant marker on your map. Like, that stuff is so much more engaging and immersive in this world. And Forbidden West had like none of that. It's just a paint by numbers open world. And it just felt like there was such a huge missed opportunity for them to do new things with an open world game that it was hard for me to not feel super disappointed while playing it. That said, I still love the general tone of the combat and the general structure of the combat. At a certain point, it becomes too samey. Like, using the different weapons is super fun. There's a bunch of new types of ammo and new types of weapons that interact differently than the first game. But it still is like, even with all the new enemy types, etc., like, it still starts to feel too samey by the end of it. And the story, I think, is fantastic. It isn't as interesting as the first game because the first game is so much more focused on who Aloy is. Literally, like, where does she come from, as well as, like, what's the historical story? How did the world get to be how it is? And that isn't really what this game is. It's more focused on the here and now and trying to solve the current problems. But I still think that there's, like, a lot of compelling characters in it and, like, fun twists and turns, and it's structured in a funny way, like an old school Zelda game would be, or like even a Mega Man game from the old days of like, hey, here's 3 bosses you need to go after. You can pick whichever order you want. Sure. Or like 3 temples, and you can pick whichever order you want. We're going to maybe softly guide you, but you can do it out of order if you want to do it. And that was kind of fun to get to pick and choose some of that stuff. And there's way more visual variety than in the first game. I know when I was playing, I sent you some pictures of like the Las Vegas area where all these like really cool neon structures in the ruins of the desert. And a lot of this stuff looks really cool, but it just, as a video game, disappointed me. It's all the stuff around the edges that I thought was great. But the core video gamey parts, the mission structure, the combat, how you interact with the open world, it just didn't move the needle forward at all. Like, they tried to change how you can navigate, like, and climb walls and stuff. Because in the first game, if you remember, like, you could only climb on specifically called out like yellow roped things.
Right.
And in this game, it's way more free, but it isn't exclusively free. Like in the new Assassin's Creed games, you can climb however you want, like on anything. You just move up, and that's just the way it goes. And that's not interesting anymore. But it is what it is. That's what they've done. This is like a half measure where you can kind of climb however you want, but not literally. Like, you have to go to specific footholds that are highlighted yellow, and it just feels super unnatural. So that was extremely tedious as well. I don't know. It sounds, as I'm talking about it, like, it makes it sound like I'm super down on this game, and I'm really not. It's a great video game. There was more opportunity here than they went for, and so that was just a little bit disappointing to me. Tell me about Dying Light 2. That's a game I actually, ironically, in the past couple of years, finally went back and started the first game in anticipation of this one coming out, and I had a really hard time getting into it, and I put it down after like 8 hours or so, and so I ended up skipping the second one, despite being interested in it. Yeah,
I don't know that the first one holds up quite as well, but I mean, at the time, it was kind of like, oh, here's, this is the next Dead Island that we've all been waiting for that hasn't really come along. And it had co-op, the first Dying Light had co-op, and that was probably like the most fun way to play the game. Just two just two bros running through the city park doing hardcore parkour, slicing heads off zombies. That was a good time. Dying Light 2, I think, had a lot of promise. I was really excited for it leading up to its release, but it was just kind of a mess. I know there was some issue with one of the writers on the game. I don't know how much influence that person had over the story, but they were either they were fired or they departed the company. I think there were some allegations raised against them in some realm. Like maybe not a great person. And so I think the development had a little bit of it struggled a bit there. And it had to be wrapped up during COVID, so there are some considerations there for that as well. But it was just a really buggy mess. It was a mess when it came out. I believe it is mostly fixed now, but I also think the structure of it narratively, they were really building up this idea of choice. If you align with certain factions, the city is going to be very dynamic and will change based upon the decisions that you make throughout the story. And those ended up being very binary decisions that weren't particularly interesting because the characters weren't all that interesting and the stakes didn't feel like they really mattered because you don't really care about any of the characters. So it made it like they just didn't do a good enough job bringing me into the experience. So I didn't end up finishing it. I did, I don't know, probably like there's basically the way the story's structured is you do some missions and there's a big climactic mission where you then make a decision and that affects a quadrant of the city. Well, sure, maybe not quite a quadrant, a sector of the city. And then you go do more missions in a new sector and have a big climactic quest and make a binary decision about that. And then it sets the tone for that sector. Then you move on. I did 2 or 3 of those sectors worth of the story, which was maybe like, I don't know, a third of the map or something. And so
were they big, meaningful? Because that was the big pitch of this game when they were announcing it was
about
all
resources.
Of this choice.
It was about who you're going to divert these resources to. Is it going to be this faction, or that faction? Whichever faction you pick owns that area, and the visuals change a little bit. And I think you maybe get access to some side quests or something because of that. But
it didn't have like huge story or like world interactivity.
That had not borne itself out in the time that I spent with it. I did leave it going, when they patch this and fix it, maybe I'll come back to it. There was enough there that I wanted to maybe try out a little more, and then I never did. Yeah, I never did. So if that tells you anything. I forgot it existed until I started writing down the games that I had played.
Well. That actually seems right. Yeah. That feels like one of those games that you play and then you move on. Yeah. Speaking of moving on, that was really it in February. There weren't really any other big games that came out in February. So if we want to jump ahead to March. No, but ironically, the joke about Breath of the Wild releasing at the same time as Horizon Zero Dawn. There was another game that released at the same time as Horizon Forbidden West and completely overshadowed it. Yeah, a little game called Elden Ring.
A game that perhaps took a lot of lessons from Breath of the Wild.
Exactly, dude. Yeah. And here's the thing, because I have not played Elden Ring. I know.
It's not your kind of game.
It is not, exactly. It is not my kind of game. I am desperate to give it a shot because of how much everybody talks about it, and not just the Dark Souls people, but us normies. Us non-Dark Souls people still loving the game. The biggest intimidating factor for me is the scale of it, and signing up to spend over 100 hours with this game in order to make any forward progress. That's just such a hard hill for me to climb with my gaming time. That's been the biggest reason I haven't. It isn't like I played 5 to 6 hours of Demon Souls back in the PS3 days. I played a couple hours of either Dark Souls 2 or 3, I don't remember. And then I put probably like 10 or so hours into Bloodborne when it was added to the PlayStation Plus back in the day. And I just don't like the combat in those games. It's just not for me. And the super hard boss shit is not me at all. I get super frustrated.
Yeah.
Elden Ring was more appealing because it is a legit open world where if you come up across a boss, you're not just gated at that boss and you have to ram your head against it. You can just fucking leave and go somewhere else and then become super overpowered and come and one-shot that boss. And that seems fun, but it's the hours and hours of side shit in order to beat the boss that I'm a little intimidated to try. So that's my excuse of why Elden Ring has not been at the top of my backlog list. But I would love, we haven't talked that much about it. I would love to, hear your takeaways.
Yeah, I think I played it for about 30 hours. I did not beat it. I don't think I will ever go back to it. Because the joy of Elden Ring for me was finding new locations and looking at the level design, the art design, the character design, seeing those sites. And it is so varied and fascinating, and trying to figure out, what inspired them to create this thing like this, and trying to ferret that information out, I think is interesting. I don't care so much about the cryptic lore, the item description lore. There's a little less of that this time around. It is a little more in the world, which I think is to its strength, or a strength. So I've beaten Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2. I got to one of the final bosses in Dark Souls 3 and couldn't beat it, and I beat about half of Bloodborne and never played Sekiro. So that's kind of my relationship with it. And I think that it makes sense why I wouldn't want to go back to Elden Ring, because I like the slower, measured, committing combat of the original games. And as time went on, they navigated to a more fast-paced, reflex, dodge heavy, invincibility frame, really reliant combat system that I don't think is very interesting. It's a lot of you don't have to play it this way, but I feel like a lot of the boss encounters are designed in such a way that it rewards these crazier acrobatic styles of play that don't interest me. I prefer a slower, more measured type of combat, and so Elden Ring didn't really reward my style of play very well.
The turtling
right
sort of play style.
Yeah, turtle and pick your moment for a big hit. And I felt like it didn't reward that. And while I was having a lot of fun going around the world on my horse and zipping through areas and seeing these amazing vistas, this fantastic art design, it also meant there was that much more square footage for me to have to search for the good gear for my character, the gear that would help reinforce my build. I could look stuff up on a wiki and find out where things are. That doesn't really interest me. I felt like in Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, I could fully explore an area and feel reasonably certain that I had gotten the items therein, and feel like I had all the options arrayed before me, and it was up to me to pick the best of those options for my build and, proceed. In Elden Ring, I can't help but wonder if I'm missing some critical item for my build that would make it all make sense all of a sudden.
And you don't want to look it up online and track it down?
Because that's boring.
Okay. All right.
It's so not interesting. So I eventually reached a point where any of the places I could find to go next were all really, really difficult for my build. And so I didn't feel like looking up where a key piece of gear was. I didn't feel like learning a new type of character to change my spec or anything like that, which you can do. So I just kind of dropped it. And I feel like that's kind of a natural end for me with that. and I really enjoyed my time with it. It's not the kind of game where I feel like I need to have finished it.
Sure.
I just would have liked to see the rest of the areas, because I'm sure there are some really cool, fascinating things. But I had some of the most like awe-inspiring moments in video games that I've ever had playing Elden Ring. Just like some of those areas are incredibly conceived.
And like in just the skyboxes and stuff, a lot of them. Because I've watched a ton of videos about Elden Ring, because it's like I want to love that game. I just know that I won't. I know that I won't enjoy it. And so that makes it so much harder for me to actually give it a fair shot. So I watch tons of videos from a lot of, YouTubers that I enjoy, and random clips of like super cool, interesting builds and how to take down this boss in one fight. I don't even play the damn game, and I've watched hours and hours and hours of content about the game, and it looks gorgeous. Like the literal fidelity isn't nearly as high as a lot of other games. Horizon Forbidden West is a good example, but the visual variety and the art design is arguably the best in any video game ever.
Yeah, I think variety is the word there, because it's just an incredible amount of art assets that they created for this thing. It's beyond anything. Yeah. Ridiculous.
The enemy design less so, and like the boss, I just feel like this whole series, like every boss just looks like the human glob ball at the end of Inside. Like every boss just looks like a mass of meat or a dragon.
They went that direction starting with Dark Souls 3, and they really reinforced it with Bloodborne, and it's kind of been that way since.
Yeah.
But like earlier Dark Souls was not that way.
Right.
Like Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1 and 2, the boss design was very different. I guess there it was a lot of like people in suits of armor. But
sure. Well, yeah, it was much more medieval style. Like this is more like gothic body horror.
Very much so, yeah.
And I just find that to be way less interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I continue to watch videos about Elden Ring to this day, because I just think it's such a cool game. And it's a fun game to watch someone play. And it's so interesting because like your comment on the way the combat works is like more appealing to me, not because I don't enjoy the sort of slower pace, but that's what I didn't, specifically in the Dark Souls games, I did not enjoy the slow combat. Slow combat's fine, but it was specifically in Dark Souls, I did not like it at all. The turtling, the dodge rolling behind them at the last second to get a hit from behind, I just found it to be so tedious, and the controls I felt were like slow and unresponsive.
Yeah.
So like taking that Sekiro influence, which again, haven't played Sekiro, but I know that it's way more aggressive and fast paced.
Oh yeah.
Finding a middle ground sounds like what I would want. I mean, it's a bummer that like you can't have the playstyle that you want to have as effectively. It'd be cool if it was a little more balanced in that way.
Yeah. And like the thing is, I know I'm an outlier in that, that's the type of build that I want to play or whatever.
Sure.
And it just so happened to be on my first run through, and maybe I missed a key item, and it's my decision to choose to not to look that up, but because that's just what these games are, right? Like they're not going to point stuff out to you and tell you where things are. And they do a surprising amount of that in this, in terms of guiding you towards their bonfire equivalents, and there are statues in the world that you can activate, and they'll give you an idea of where a dungeon might be, where there will be like a new spell or a new summon or piece of gear. I just feel like I didn't find, nothing I found clicked for me in the build I was going for, in the play style.
Were you playing like a sword and shield, or?
So I was doing like a 2-hand heavy, like fat roll, big boy, and then I had another one where I was a caster, and my friend had said something about there being a really powerful wand, and so I had been kind of on the hunt for that, and again refusing to look it up, and so that character didn't really work for me either, because I felt like I was, again, it happened to be twice. I felt like there was a piece of gear that would close the circle on this build that I was excited about trying, but I just couldn't find it. Or if
one thing,
or maybe I had it and I just didn't know what the fuck it was.
that is another, like, everything's so esoteric, even in like the item descriptions a lot of times can be hard to like know what the fuck do I do with this thing? Like, how does it actually work?
Yeah.
But that is like
and
another...
Either you're in for that, or you're up for that or
yes.
not. Like,
well, either you're up for like being confused and figuring out, or you're just going to sign up to Google everything, which I don't have a problem with. I'm a busy dad. I'm going to fucking... What's the best sword for this type of playstyle? I'm going to mainline getting that sword. I have zero problems with that, but it's also fine to not want to engage with it that way. It is like... It's not one-to-one, but it reminds me of like when Destiny came out and you had all these online forums of like how to connect with people and how to do the right thing and how to optimize all the stuff that you were doing, which is like the opposite of what the game wants you to do. It wants you to explore and find the nooks and crannies, but not everybody's got time for that, you know?
Right.
And it is what it is. People should be able to engage with it as they so choose. I will say that, like, because you mentioned the spell casting, like seeing all the summons and things... And a lot of people, you know, coming back and be like, oh, that's easy mode, using the summons and using all these random spells, which, like, the elitism around...
That's fine for them. I feel like there's been less of that this time around because the audience has become so broad.
Sure.
Those voices are less loud.
Game, that is true, because there are more voices, yes. Yeah. But those voices are just as loud. There are just more other voices.
Sure.
Because that's another thing that is a turnoff for me of FromSoft games is... how annoying FromSoft hardcore people are, like how pretentious and it's just so frustrating to like, oh, get good, like, oh, this blah, blah, blah. But has been fun to see all the build variety in this game, more so than in previous games. And like, it's not accessibility options, right? Because like there are literal accessibility options in a lot of games nowadays that are great. But like the way that they allow you to make the experience easier without having an easy difficulty. Because that's always been a common conversation around FromSoft games is like, well, they need an easy difficulty to make it better for casual people. And like, not every video game needs to cater to every single person. Like, if you are not willing to sign up for an uber hard game, FromSoft games are not from you. That's totally fine for that to be the case.
Yeah.
But
it's okay to want it, but to expect it is another thing.
Yeah, or like to be mad that it doesn't exist, right. I think is wrong.
Yeah.
But specific to Elden Ring, I think that they took a smart approach to finding a solution for this. With the summons, with all the spells, like a lot of the things that I have seen, it makes it so much easier on a particular boss if you can summon in the right person or use the right spell or whatever. And like that, again, that stuff appeals to me because I don't want to ram my head against the same boss for 4 hours. I'm going to try a couple times, and then if I can't, I would love to find an easier way to move forward. So you can engage with that stuff or not. It's the option, which I think is good.
Yeah.
But like a literal easy mode, I think undermines the game design. And so that part of it, like if they don't want to do that, I support them not doing an easy mode. Okay. Well, we're closing in on an hour, and we've made it through February. So, marching forwards. Hey, a video game that we have both played.
Oh, boy.
Tiny Tina's Wonderlands.
Yep.
The bummer is we didn't play it together because it was like several months later by the time I got to it. But we actually both have played this video game.
Yeah.
And ironically, I re-listened to our last episode of the podcast back from 2019, and we were talking about Borderlands 3, which we were playing together. So it's gone full circle. So, yeah, I played 10 to 15 hours.
That's
of
about
Tiny Tina's
what
Wonderlands.
I played, yeah.
It might have been less. It felt that much because I didn't have that much fun.
Yeah, it felt like
I did not have that much fun. And part of it is the writing, certainly, because it can always be sort of cringy. And there are always like a handful of jokes that hit and more that don't. But that's part of the charm in a weird way.
Yeah.
But like, it wasn't different enough from regular Borderlands, or like it didn't match my expectation of how different it should be from regular Borderlands.
Yeah, I think, yes, I heartily agree. I had a lot of issues with the writing. As someone who plays D&D and really likes D&D, the writing was maybe some of the most painfully bad shit
Just of like, it's clear these people don't know dick about D&D.
Yeah, it's like when television shows would write a nerdy character.
Right. And they don't like it's like Big Bang Theory.
Holy shit, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is fucking the Big Bang Theory of Borderlands.
Great. Love that.
And guess what? There's no laugh track in this one.
Yeah. I will say the thing that I did like about it, which is kind of the only thing that I did like about it, is the fact that it is like a D&D campaign and they're making it up as they go along. You have those like quick change moments as you're playing it. Like there's a famous thing from early on in the game where like you're storming the castle.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Tina's like, oh, and then there are a bunch of boats and meteors and there's a zombie army and they all just appear out of nowhere. That part of it is super fun. And so I like how you are playing this live, or it feels like you're playing something that is unfolding live. But like the literal, it's a video game part, it was just too much a reliance on just guns. And then also they leaned more into the melee, which was horrible.
Yeah, the melee was so bad. I was really expecting them to have done something there.
Yeah.
Because melee in Borderlands has always been like useless.
Right.
I was really expecting a lot of variety there, which is maybe more on me. But then also like I figured, okay, like crossbows and bows, that'll be cool.
Yes.
But then those are just
they just shoot
guns.
Like guns.
They're just guns. Yeah. And I'm like, what are we? Why though?
Yeah.
You had an opportunity to do something different and fun, and you just made it boring.
There's the overworld stuff, which I thought was so tedious.
Yes.
And like, I get it. It's supposed to be kind of a smaller experience game. And so they needed a way to sort of weave these things together without it being these big open worlds. But it just was annoying. Like I hated and like how they would have like the challenge levels interspersed where like you spawn in and you just have to kill like 15 guys and then you're done and you get a gear thing. And like, it was just really tedious and samey. Yeah, it was just kind of a bummer. I had like relatively, as a person that loves Borderlands, despite its many flaws, like I had relatively high expectations for this, and it just really, really missed the mark for me.
Yeah, I agree.
So, moving on, let's talk about Tunic. I know you mentioned you've played a little bit of Tunic. I did not get super far into it, and that's not, an indictment of the game necessarily. It was more just a... to what you're talking about with Elden Ring, of how you want to be finding and discovering all of these things. I eventually hit a point where it became a little too tedious for me in Tunic, of like not knowing where to go next, and the esoteric nature of how they like. I love the setup of it's like an old video game inside the game, and you find pages of an old video game manual that you need to piece together, and you need to see how these things tie into one another in order to like figure out a new attack or what an item does.
Yeah.
Such a cool concept.
To me, that was the most interesting part of the game.
Absolutely. I just ran out of patience with it, to be honest. That in combination with it's not a roguelike, but like the way that you... Well, I mean, it's like it works like a Dark Souls. Yeah, it works like a Dark Souls game where you die, you spawn back at your bonfire, and all the enemies are there again. And by using a bonfire to heal yourself, it respawns all the enemies. Like that part of it it just becomes a little tedious, because I found the combat to be pretty deficient. Like I just didn't enjoy the combat. And it made the game like arbitrarily really, really hard, and not in a fun way.
Yeah, I was getting those vibes even early on. I finally got the sword, and I got back to like that starting area with the sword, and that's kind of where I stopped playing, because I was like, well, fighting with the stick sucks. Maybe when I get the sword, it'll be better. And I was like, nah, it still feels bad.
Yeah.
So I stopped playing.
It's such a generic way to describe it that is not helpful, but it feels bad. The combat feels bad. It's like a little slow.
The enemies don't telegraph their attacks in a helpful way. So like the dodge roll basically doesn't matter, because you don't know when the enemies are going to attack or what those attacks are going to look like. It doesn't feel like it's easy to bait them into certain types of attacks. It just feels like you're kind of out of control the whole time.
And because like the punishment for dying can be pretty high, depending on how far you have explored since your last bonfire, like using a new item that you don't know what it does is intimidating. And then on top of that, not knowing when you're going to find another one of those items, I was always afraid to use my stuff. And that, again, it makes it harder because the stuff is there to help you get through the game easier. But like, I don't know what this bottle does. Does it heal me? Does it give me stamina? Do I throw it at an enemy to do damage?
Right.
Like, it just, all of the systems together just became too tedious for me to overcome in my limited time. But I think that the visual style I'm in love with. The like cubic, cutesy with the dark tone of it, I think is a match made in heaven. Like I said, I love the video game manual style of menus and like the general structure of the game I wanted to enjoy. It was just too many roadblocks that I eventually just wasn't able to. Like, I just put it down one day and I just didn't go back to it. It wasn't like a conscious decision of I got really frustrated and I wanted to quit. It was like I played it for 6 or whatever hours and then I just kind of stopped. The next time I had gaming time, I played something else instead and never went back.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
All right. Tell me about Triangle Strategy. I know nothing about this game.
Yeah, so it came out on Switch in March, and it is the new game by I believe by the Octopath Traveler folks.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, but except this one, instead of a kind of standard Final Fantasy turn-based RPG, it's like a Final Fantasy Tactics grid-based tactics game. Like what is it? War of the Lion, or
sure.
I think like Tactics Ogre, I think is the same way, like as a different franchise example. But it is gorgeous. You know, it has the same, it doesn't quite have the same papercraft feel as Octopath did. Like Octopath really felt like these were printed on pieces of folded cardboard or paper. Right. This is less like that. It's more just like a really nice pixel art that has been layered over pretty slick 3D mesh and has a good lighting engine thrown on it.
Is it the same lighting as Octopath? Because that was what made it so striking to me. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it has less gloss. Because Octopath, the gloss is what made Octopath feel like it was papercraft. Yes. This doesn't quite have that. So it's a little more textured. But it still looks really, really good. I think there are some issues with it. I think the writing has been pretty good so far. It's pretty standard fantasy fare, but it's written in a way that, it doesn't belabor its points too much. I think a lot of JRPGs can kind of beat around the bush way too much, especially when they're
Octopath is a great example of that.
Yes.
That's why I fell off of that game, is they were so focused on those individual character stories, and I was just like, oh man, it's just so melodramatic and tedious.
Right.
And there's no larger thread. Yeah. That was tough.
Not that there's no melodrama in this, because there certainly is, but I feel like
it's a JRPG.
Yeah. It's a little more it's paced better. And I think part of that comes from, they're releasing on the Switch, it being a handheld title, and I think they like the combat, the fights tend to be anywhere from like 5 to 10 minutes, and like that's a good bite size combat thing, and then you can get some story in between and go do other things, and then you have another 5 to 10 minute battle instead of like a turn-based battle. If a turn-based battle's 5 to 10 minutes, that feels pretty long. In this, you're moving pieces around like a chessboard, so it feels a little more justified in the length, and then it is a little bit smarter about its pacing that way. So I really enjoy the look. I think when you do something, it gives a lot of information to the player. Sorry, I just hit my microphone. It gives a lot of necessary information to the player. Like, it lets you move your character and then undo that move if you haven't committed to an action yet. So you can like move somewhere, try out like see what an attack would look like, and then if like it's not going to kill that enemy, because it'll tell you like how much of their health bar it's expected to do. If it's not, if you don't think it's going to kill that enemy, you can undo the move and move them somewhere else and stuff like that. If you commit to an action, that's not undoable, but the move stuff is. So that's helpful. It gives you a little flexibility there. There's sort of they call it a quietus point system, where it's just like you are God and you can intervene in the battle and give your characters a buff. Like once per battle you can do these actions, and the more battles you fight, the more points you're getting, and you can unlock more of those quietus commands and more points to be able to do more things in a battle that kind of help turn the tides a little bit if you're struggling. It has like a whole upgrade system where you're gathering mats from these different repeatable battles and then using them to upgrade your characters, like increasing their defense or strength, or, you know, and it's all kind of, the upgrades all tie into how they're best utilized in combat. Like there will be some passive things that, you know, like one passive would be for a character to, you know, land more critical hits. So like you would want to purchase that upgrade for them, and so on and so forth. So like so that part is fun. And that loop is fun. Unfortunately, the game expects you to grind a lot.
Okay.
But there are no random encounters. So you do these the mock mental battles. Is what they call them, like back in your encampment, which is just like your social space for all your characters to hang out. And there's like shops and stuff, and you can buy and sell stuff and upgrade and all that. And then you talk to a person and engage in a mental mock battle where you can level your characters up and get coins and mats and stuff in between your main story missions. And each main story mission will have a level recommendation for the characters that you're going to send in there. It'll also have recommended characters for the fight, so you kind of know who to train up and who to include. You don't have to follow that advice. You can choose your own thing, but the game gives you recommendations. So that's good. However, so far, I'm only like 15 hours in, but so far, 12 hours. So far, every story mission, it unlocks one more leveled mock battle mission. So for each new story mission, I'm having to play
the same one.
It's that same one over and over again to grind it.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yes. Yeah. So if they had fixed that, I feel like this game would be incredible. But that's the thing that really sucks. Because you're going into the fight a few times in a row using the same party and the same formation.
It's just the same
So
thing.
the fight plays out basically the same way, aside from some critical hits and stuff.
That's not fun at all.
It makes me wish I could just hit auto battle.
Well, and especially if those matches are 5 to 10 minutes long, that's a long ass time to do the same thing over and over. Because you know, we talk about Pokemon, right? That's the same fucking thing you do in Pokemon. It's the same thing over and over again.
But they're so fast.
But it takes 10 seconds to beat a Pokemon.
Yeah. And at every battle, you know, you could go fight different Pokemon in different background, whatever. You can do things to shake it up. This is the same map, the same group of enemies every time. And a thing I found out yesterday, because I was looking it up. I've been playing this on my Steam Deck because it released on PC recently. I've tried it on the Switch, but my Switch was having Joy-Con drift and it ran like shit. I have a launch Switch. I just don't fucking play my Switch anymore because it's a useless pile of garbage now. But I have a beautiful, lovely Steam Deck. So I bought the game again when it was on sale on Steam, and I've been playing it there and really enjoying it on that because it runs shit well, because it's a good piece of hardware not made by idiots. But sorry, I did a little editorializing there. But it's just, I forgot my point inside of all those jokes. It's good. I just wish they fixed that one part.
Yeah.
That's kind of the beginning and the end of it, is like the drip feed of getting mats and incrementally upgrading my characters. Oh, that's it. I found out yesterday there are 30 characters. There are 30 people you can choose from in your party. Which means...
And are they all actually unique? Like they each have a totally different type of class and moves and weapons?
Totally.
Man.
Which also means when you go into a new main mission, you have to grind every one of those characters up to level.
Yeah.
However, the XP scales. Every character only needs 100 XP every time they level.
Okay.
But depending on and they get the same amount of XP every time they do an action, and that could be a buff, that can be an attack, it can be, casting a spell, whatever. As long as they do an action, they get XP that is scaled based on their level and the level of the encounter. So if I'm playing a level 11 encounter and I have level 11 dudes, I get 10 XP per action. So it's only 10 actions to level them up.
Okay.
However, once they're one level above, that goes down to 4 XP per action. So it takes longer. So,
yeah.
But if they're under-leveled, like dramatically under-leveled, they basically gain a level every action. So I think what the game wants you to do is, like, don't touch all the characters. Go into each main story mission and look at the recommended characters and grind them up to level.
Right.
And then, because each, like, they might not be needed for a few missions, and by the time it comes around to them, they'll level up super fast because you'll have a leveled mock battle to do that will raise them super fast. I think that's what they want you to do.
What if you've got, like, a party where, like, you need these 3 dudes, and one of them's level 25, one of them's level 20, and one of them's level 3? How do you level those 3 guys up? Do you go and do a level 20 side?
Yeah, you would go do a level 20 thing.
But doesn't the level 2 person just get their ass kicked?
Not necessarily. Because, like, you could put different supporting characters in that battle with them that would draw aggro. Like people who will provoke attacks or create decoys that enemies will go for instead of your underleveled character. So your underleveled character could just do attacks every round and level every round kind of a thing. And they would level up really fast, which would make them less susceptible to getting hurt. So it's like, it's a bad system though, because like, it's bad for the way in which I would like to engage with the game, which is to find my favorite characters or my favorite party combination that's flexible, like how you would form a Pokemon party, a Pokemon team. I would like to do that, like find my favorite characters and really grind them and make them really good and use them every time. I can do that, but the game is really kind of dragging me towards, switch these people in and out and give everyone their screen time kind of a thing.
And I think that's fine.
It's fine.
I think that it's fine to encourage you to use different parties, but they need to make that easier.
Right.
It's still a bad system.
Yeah.
Like some kind of, to use the Pokemon analogy again, some kind of experience share that you can use to help those, like the underleveled people level up just a little bit faster. Yeah. Like that seems like would have been a better solution.
Yeah. Or like an auto battle option.
Sure,
just
also that.
Automatically does it.
Yeah, turn 10 minutes into 2 minutes would be nice.
Yeah, like hyper speed auto battle.
Yeah, a 4x speed. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, that wraps up March. So let's talk through what we played in April.
So let's talk about May.
In May. No, it's funny. So April's the only month that
there was nothing
we didn't play
new.
anything that released.
Right.
But ironically, like just out of curiosity, I was like, well, did nothing good come out in April? And there's like a ton of stuff from April that is like high up on my want to play list. Like Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga came out in April. Chinatown Detective Agency, Lake, which I really want to check out.
Oh, that's on Game Pass, I believe.
I know it is. Nobody Saves the World, also on Game Pass. That's from the Guacamelee folks. I wanted to check that out. So there was like, Dorf Romantic, which was like one of the highest reviewed games of the year, came out then. So there's a lot of stuff from April that I did want to play. I just happened to not play any of that stuff in April. But yeah, so in May, I played Trek to Yomi. I did not play Trek to Yomi in May. I played Trek to Yomi the last couple of days, ironically. I'm not going to continue playing Trek to Yomi.
Okay.
I have greatly enjoyed the visual style. I mean, like, Ghost of Tsushima has that, like, Kurosawa mode of the old school samurai movies to try to emulate that with the black and white, and it's not quite exactly what the reference is supposed to be. This feels so much closer to those old style films. The canted camera angles, the static camera, the moving camera in certain scenes, like the fixed camera, the like slow insert close-ups during the face down 1-to-1 fights. Like the tone and like this visual style of it, I am in love with. The fact that it's black and white really helps this game because the literal fidelity is not super high. I mean, it's a small indie title. The like character designs and like when they do the close-ups on the faces, like they don't look amazing. But the general like vibe of the game, I am hardcore into. The actual gameplay part of it, I thought I was enjoying for the first couple hours. So it has like, I think 7 chapters and I have just beaten chapter 4 or maybe 5. I don't remember. So I'm like 2/3 through. And I ended up against a super hard boss that I died to like 3 or 4 times and I was not getting anywhere near beating him. And I was like, no, screw this. Like it literally happened this afternoon, just a couple hours ago. And I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm not coming back to this. I'm not having fun.
Okay.
But like the first couple hours, I remember reading reviews of the game and a lot of reviews saying what I was saying about the visual style, but really criticizing the combat of it not being super responsive, it feeling too slow for like the, it oftentimes will throw 2 or 3 enemies at you at once on either side of you. And so you really have to like manage your blocks front and behind. And there's a stance switch button for you to face either direction. And there are also attacks that like you can only do if you're facing away from the enemy. And a lot of that stuff was so cool in the beginning when it was just like, you're a samurai fighting some bandits and they're assholes. And that was fun. But as the game goes on, you're in new areas where there are different types of enemies that take way more hits to take down. And it becomes very tedious. And it becomes like a war of attrition where like they'll throw 8 enemies at you at once, but it's still you can only ever fight 2 at a time because it's on a single 2D plane. It's just left and right when you're fighting.
Sure.
So there's no 3D movement, right? So they can only have one guy on either side of you that can attack you. And so then it's like you kill one guy and he's just replaced by another guy. And then you kill the next guy and he's just replaced by another guy. And that just, like I said, it feels like a war of attrition where you're just slowly making progress on these big groups of enemies that take like some of them 10 plus hits to take them down. And it just becomes very tedious. And then the general combat I don't find to be particularly difficult, except when they have these huge groups of people and eventually you just get hit too many times and you die and it is what it is. But the boss battles, not all, but some of the boss battles, the difficulty curve is just this hugely sharp incline where like you're fighting this weird witch boss that has 2 swords and she jumps over you. She has this like AoE attack. She hits you from behind. She hits you with this like scream that freezes you in place. And then she shoots these things at you from a distance. And it's like completely sensory overload compared to the normal enemies, which is just like, I hit you with sword. You hit me with sword. I block. I hit you with sword again. And it feels like I'm playing 2 different video games.
Yeah.
Where like, it's like the boss battles are like a Dark Souls style boss battle where there is this huge variety of attacks from an enemy with very little indication of when or what they're going to do. And you just have to like slowly learn after a bunch of tries how to beat the boss. And that's just not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like, I feel like if the story was motivating me more, I'd be more willing to overcome it, but it's just a pretty paint by numbers fallen samurai story where there's a really bad dude that you got to bring to justice and he's murdering everybody. And again, like the style and like the environments for what they can do on a small budget in just black and white, the environment design is super cool, but there's not enough motivating factor for me to keep going. And today I just hit a point where I was like, I would just rather go try something else. So
okay.
It was disappointing. I was really looking forward to it. I was really loving the style and the visuals, but the gameplay, it ended up hitting a point where it was no longer fun. Once they start throwing so many more enemies at you, it just became too samey.
Yeah, that's a shame. I feel like they should have They could have better utilized those spaces in between bosses by introducing different kinds of enemies that make you play around with, countering some of the types of attacks that you'd encounter in the boss fights.
Yeah. And there are plenty of, call them sub-bosses that are one-on-one where they're more akin to the regular enemies. Just they have more health or they've got a couple more moves. But just it's like at the end of every chapter, there's a big boss. And those big bosses are so weird in how they interact with you. It just feels odd.
Okay.
But yeah. All right. So June. Just to mention briefly, I played a few hours of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, which was not the Cowabunga collection, because both of those released this year, but Shredder's Revenge was the one of, it's a brand new TMNT-style game.
Right, okay.
It's, tying into the old school stuff. I thought it was super fun. I was playing, this was one of the first games I played when I got my Xbox Series X this year.
Okay.
I think I got it, around my birthday, and this was one of the first games I played in June. And I had a ton of fun with it for a few hours, just playing with randos and going through and doing all the moves. It totally reminded me of the old school arcade games. I fell off of it because the performance was horrible.
Really?
Every single level, I got kicked out from some kind of network issue. And there was a section where I was in with a bunch of folks that we were right towards the end of the boss, and then the enemies just stopped spawning. And we couldn't advance, we couldn't move the screen forward, but there was nothing happening. And so slowly, one by one, we all just quit out and lost all our progress. And so that's what killed it for me. But I was having a ton of fun with it. It was very nostalgic and good, perfectly fine co-op with randos. You don't need to talk to one another. You just beat up some ninjas, man. So it was a bummer that it performed so poorly for me. I have not gone back to it. It's possible that stuff's been fixed, but too many other things to play.
Yeah.
Speaking of,
that's a shame.
What else?
That's that original TMNT arcade game is one of my childhood highlights.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
Turtles in Time, bro. Cool. What do you got from June?
I played a bit of Industria, which is an indie game. It's a first-person shooter, sort of go through each area, scrounge for some ammo, and proceed, enter some story dump, and then proceed to the next area, yada yada. Pretty simple in terms of the gameplay mechanics, and the video game stuff that you're doing is pretty simple. There are some really simple puzzles. It's more just it's like a fancy walking simulator that has some FPS elements to it. It's sort of a post-war Soviet Cold War Soviet, I would say, is kind of the time period in which it feels like it's set. But someone activates some sort of a temporal technology, and you go to investigate it, and you get sucked through into this other world where there are, autonomous machines that are seemingly bad. So you go around killing a lot of these machines. And it gave me just kind of low rent BioShock vibes in the trailers when I first saw it. And so it was one of the Steam Next Fest demos that I played.
Okay, I was gonna ask where you came across this because I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, it was a Steam Next Fest demo, and I remember kind of thinking it was neat. So without getting too far down the rabbit hole, I've had a lot of computer issues this year. It turns out that my cooling unit, my liquid cooling unit on my CPU had failed, and was no longer cooling my CPU. So my CPU for probably a few months was running at 100 degrees Celsius all the time.
Yikes.
And so games wouldn't perform very well, as you can imagine. And I couldn't determine the cause of it, and I was looking around and looking at my performance, and my CPU was always at 30% capacity or whatever. So I was like, well, clearly the bottleneck's not my CPU. Well, yeah, dummy, check the temperature, idiot. So I have that all fixed now, so I can actually run games. But Industria was one of the games I was trying to play while my computer was suffering its disease. So I do need to go back to it and finish it. I only got a few hours into it. There's enough there that it's interesting and weird enough. It's kind of cryptic in its storytelling, and there's enough there for me to try and I want to figure out kind of what's going on there. And now that my computer should be able to run it, I would like to go back to it. But yeah,
I'm looking at screens of this game because again, I had never heard it. You said it's like a walking simulator? Like, it looks just like a straight-up first-person shooter.
Yeah, so it's like a walking simulator in that's about how the story is paced. There are very simple puzzles like a walking simulator would have, a lot of reading notes and things, but then the actual gameplay is intermittently some shooting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it also, I mean, it looks like fairly high fidelity.
Yeah, I'll be excited to try it out with settings not all on low.
With a PC that works.
And a PC that works, yeah.
Well, because it's very much like a realistic... It actually reminds me a lot with some of the enemy design stuff of...
Nier Automata.
Atomic Heart.
Oh, Atomic Heart,
that's
yeah.
Coming out,
yeah.
Just with the robots and the sort of Soviet era kind of thing.
Yeah, it gives me some of those vibes as well. It's definitely like a very small team, B tier.
Yeah.
You know, there are like some weird animations, like the AI doesn't always do the things you expect it to. There's some, loose game design elements and stuff like that. It's not perfect, but, I think you and I have talked at length about how I appreciate B-tier games, and this is certainly one of those, so I would like to go back to it. It's just a matter of remembering to do that.
Well, now you have it written down,
Yes, that's true. Also in June, Raft 1.0 released. So this is a game that's like right in my wheelhouse. I've been playing this all through early access, so I don't have to like touch on it too much. But Raft is open world. Yeah, I guess it is open world, open sea survival game where you are grabbing detritus. Is it detritus or detritus?
Detritus.
Detritus. Yeah. Okay. Follow your gut, Kyle.
Arceus.
Arceus. Detritus from the ocean and using it to build a raft and survive on the ocean. And you're coming across islands and getting resources from them. And there is a story that they have added to the game throughout the conducting of early access and different updates and things. And now it has like a way to beat the game kind of a thing, which is neat. And they've added a lot of cool new points of interest throughout that are tied to the story that you get to go to. And so it's just kind of this gradual ramp up of crafting survival game technology, leading you to new narrative locations and finding out more about the events that led to the world being in the state it's in, aka Kevin Costner's Waterworld. Which, hey, I want a really good Waterworld game. I'll just say that right now. I want a really fucking good Waterworld game, and I think
not a movie tie-in, like not one that follows the story, but just that setting is great.
Well, yeah, and I would do the setting of the film.
Yes.
Not following Kevin Costner as Waterworld man.
Yes.
But yes, set in the world of Waterworld. Totally. I would play the shit out of that.
Tom Water, that's the character's name, right?
Yeah. Now, I believe it was Harold Osterman Oglethorpe, H2O.
Yikes. I was wondering where you were going with that.
Pretty good.
I am not disappointed.
I had to say the joke just to make sure you got it. Anyways, Raft, it's good, and it's in 1.0 now, and it's fully released, and people should play it because it's fucking awesome. Raft is great.
Nice. Yeah. For I was about to say survival horror, survival style. If
you're afraid
games.
of the ocean, yeah.
Well, yeah, that would be a survival horror game for me. Absolutely. Well, cool. Moving into July, the game that won the hearts of millions with its orange fur, Stray. I'm actually surprised that you have not played Stray.
I hate cats.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'm not a cat person either, but I like cats in the way that people make memes of cats. And that's what this game is. Like, you're not taking care of a cat, the video game. It's just that, like, cats are fun, not to own one. I don't want to own a cat.
I don't even like memes of cats. I just think they're fucking assholes.
You're just the worst.
That's just cats are antithetical to the way in which I would like to engage with animals.
I 100% agree with that, but they're still funny because they are assholes. But that's not pertaining to this, because the cat in Stray is not an asshole. I mean, I guess you can kind of make him one. You can knock shit off of the table and stuff, which is cute. But again, to live that life in a video game is fun. Okay, I really enjoyed Stray. I, again, came to this after it came out, so I wasn't like wrapped up in the weight of expectations of cat video game like so many people were.
Sure.
So I had seen sort of the talk about it that like its actual gameplay is pretty slight, which it is. The fact that like the back half in the not combat scenarios, but like the actual engagement scenarios where there are enemies and how you deal with them being pretty tedious, which is true. But I actually like surprisingly was really engaged with the quote sneer quote story of the game.
Okay.
Of, you know, you're a cat that is up, you know, it's post-apocalypse like every video game, but you're living up in the woods with your kitty cat friends, and then you fall down into the depths of this old city where no one exists but the robots who have taken on human personas, and you interact with them and learn about the doldrums of their lives and sort of the class structure that the robots have built to mimic what humans used to have. And that, like, that stuff is more, call it like world building or like the setting establishment, or like that sort of like non-narrative storytelling that I thought like is so dope. The setting of Stray is amazing. I loved talking to every robot and just hearing what they had to say and like their feelings on things. I loved reading all of the, you know, banners that are up on the walls from like years in the past and sort of like uncovering a lot of that stuff over the course of the game. And then the actual story of the cat trying to get out of here and go find its friends again. And you become buddies with this little robot that rides on your back, and he tells you where to go, and he translates for you with the different robots, and sort of the story between the cat and that robot, which is like not told through dialogue, I also thought was really fun and kind of heartwarming and touching the way that it wraps up. Well, not touching is the wrong word because it's kind of sad, but I guess I could spoil Stray. The robot dies. Your little robot sacrifices himself so that you can escape. And it like legitimately, it took me by surprise because I wasn't expecting that from this type of game. And it like legitimately hit me kind of hard because as the cat, like you can lay down in a bunch of places. Like, you can lay down on one of the robot's bellies and he sings you a song, or you can lay down on this random pillow and just listen to the ambient music. And in this, like, the robot zaps itself, and then you can, like, lay down next to the robot, and it just does a slow pan, and, like, it was, like, a really heartfelt, surprising moment in a video game where you play as a cat. But yeah, I really loved my time with it. I almost got the platinum. I missed like a couple random collectibles that I don't have the patience to go back and do again. But I say that more as a means of like, I went in the nooks and crannies of this. I like did all the little, not even side activities, because there aren't really that many of them, but like I explored this world to death because I loved being in it so much. So yeah, really good video game, really touching story.
That's cool.
Being a cat was great, as expected, because everybody loves you despite the fact that you're mean to everyone. And that's something only cats can get away with.
Hey, look, that cat's lucky it didn't come across me.
Yeah, fair enough. You would not have survived
noted cat
in the robo-apocalypse. Right. All right, so what do you got from July here?
I have a few things. I won't spend too much time on any of them. Live Alive is the first one I'd like to talk about. So that, I believe, is a game that never released in the U.S. originally.
I believe that is correct.
Like there were fan translations of old cartridges of it. I think it was a Super Nintendo game. And it's really crazy for like the time in which it came out, because it's structured. It's a bunch of like, it's like a collection of one-act plays or short films.
Right.
It's like,
all in like different time periods, different universes.
Yeah,
and
all
stuff.
different
really
time
weird.
periods, different eras of humanity. One is a Wild West one. There's one in like Edo era Japan. One in like the future. One in present day. That's like a wrestling thing. It's just everything. It's a crazy. Oh, there's a caveman one. It's just a crazy spread of things. I will say, like, the shortcoming of it is, I think, the thing that makes it so fascinating, these bite-sized stories and how different that was from anything else that had ever, released on the system. I think also to its detriment in that, like, there are some really cool vignettes in that I want to be full games, because when you're playing through the vignette, it's like an accelerated mini JRPG. So you're leveling up and gaining abilities still, but at like a crazy pace, because there really aren't that many fights that you do, and things like, and some of them you don't really do any fights at all. It's just all doing light puzzle solving and things like that, in a lot of conversations and participating in sort of the narrative telling there. It's really, really, it was a fascinating thing, and I'm really glad that I played it, and I'm glad that they re-released it, and it was an HD 2D, which is so very much my shit. It looks phenomenal. Yeah, and like the way that like you can be playing one and save it and drop out and launch another one, and so cool. you don't progress through them linearly. You can play anyone at any time to any degree. It's pretty damn cool. It is.
That kind of answers my because I was going to ask if you've played Chrono Trigger.
I have played some of Chrono Trigger,
because that has it doesn't not similar structure because of how you can back in and out, and that does have a story, but right. Just with the time traveling part of it, I was curious if it compared at all.
Yeah, so it's like Chrono Trigger in that it has a bunch of different eras that you can go to, but each one is its own separate vignette. Right, completely separate from the others, that has its own save file progress and stuff. Yeah, it's like a collection of miniature JRPGs. And they're like the caveman one, there's no actual dialogue because they're cavemen, but it's funny. Like, they have like little emoticon things instead of dialogue, and their sprites do funny things, and it's like it's written funny. And it's like, it's horny in a weird way. Okay. Because it's coming out of Japan. But it's like, and that part is funny too. So yeah, I don't know. Live Alive. It's very charming. A lot of fun. I also played some Bear and Breakfast. Speaking of charming, that game oozes charm. It's, you're a bear and you run a bed and breakfast. And it seems like all of the humans in the world pretty much just accept the fact that you're a bear running a bed and breakfast. A bread and breakfast.
Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. It's I think the concept is a lot more interesting than the execution, in that it's a funny, charming concept, and it has a lot of that, but the moment to moment stuff, I think, ends up being a little tedious because of the layers of systems they eventually pile onto the player. Like, your first bed and breakfast is really small. You just have a couple rooms you're dealing with that you can decorate by, walking around every day and collecting trash and crafting things or buying things or whatever, submitting things and getting tickets to buy new furniture or whatever. And you build up a B&B that is, to suit the needs of the incoming customers each day, so you can change things around, add things to attract more customers that will pay more money. And then you're building up the area around it a little bit. And then it gets to a point where the customers start wanting certain foods. And then you have to build a kitchen. And then you have to run around and grab ingredients to make the foods that the customers want to keep them happy. And I'm like, I'm out. it's one layer to, like, I'm already running around and grabbing stuff to craft furniture and find all this stuff. I don't also want to hunt down all these ingredients every day and then make the fucking thing, the thing, and it's just got to
be fair,
too much.
To be fair, food is one half of the bed and breakfast formula.
Yeah, but usually the place isn't feeding you. They just have, like, suggested restaurants.
What do you think a bed and breakfast does?
Well, yeah, like, sure, the initial bed and breakfasts were bed and breakfast, but now you, like, a B&B, you're not getting fed at a B&B anymore, man. It's just people set up. Then it isn't
a B&B. That's literally the whole. What you are talking about is a hotel, which also, let's be clear, most hotels feed you breakfast.
No.
Yeah, they do.
So it's not.
When's the last time you've been to a hotel?
I have been to 2 B&Bs in the past year, and neither of them served food.
Then neither of them were B&Bs, my guy.
They were on Airbnb.
It's literally in the name.
They were on Airbnb, motherfucker.
Airbnb is not a bed and breakfast. Let's make that clear distinction. Sure. Airbnb is a place where you rent someone's house from them.
Yeah, but that's what I think of when I think B&B. Also,
it isn't called I would
not want to go to some stranger's house and eat their cooking.
I 100% agree with that. That is not a B&B, and that is not what Bear and Breakfast is trying to be.
Yeah, and I guess that's my aversion. That is my aversion to Bear and Breakfast's formula. Their close adherence to the original definition of bed and breakfast is to its detriment in my case, because I find that to be extremely weird.
You would rather this game is the bear runs a series of Airbnbs where he jacks up the cleaning fee prices in order to maintain a profit. That's a fun video game for you?
Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he still has to decorate it, though.
Okay, right.
I just want to play Animal Crossing, is I think what it comes down to.
Yes.
But this game is not that, and that's fine. It's not for me.
Right.
A lot of charming art in it, though, and some fun music that repeats too much. Then Power Wash Simulator hit 1.0 in July, and that's like, talk about games that got me through the pandemic. Just chilling out, pretending to do a chore instead of cleaning the house that was dirty in real life. Hell yeah.
Right.
Hell yeah. Power Wash
Cleaning
Simulator.
in real life? It's like that meme template with the chick that has the, like, she tastes the beer or whatever and she's like, ew, gross, and then, oh, maybe, and then, oh, no, gross. It's that meme, but, like, cleaning in real life, gross face. Cleaning in a video game, happy face.
Yeah.
That's Power Wash Simulator.
Well, because there's a dopamine rush when you clean something in real life, like the accomplishment of a task. It feels good.
Right.
However, there's a physical fatigue and a cost associated with that, with cleaning supplies. Power Wash Simulator, it's just a one-time upfront cost, baby, and there's no physical fatigue. It's just all dopamine all the time.
Hell yeah. You just hold the button.
Yeah. And you know what? You don't even have to hold the button. You can set it to always be spraying.
And waste water, because it's not real life.
Hell yeah.
There's no resource scarcity in Power Wash Simulator.
All right, so there is a meta community in Power Wash Simulator that tries to complete each washing with as little water as possible.
Yep, of course there is.
Because that is a metric that is tracked.
Oh, no way. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, I have been saving this game for a rainy day, like a day where I need that dopamine.
You shouldn't wash your car in a rainy day.
That's why you do it in a video game, because I can't wash it in real life during a rainy day.
No,
like, for real though, I've been saving it for like a day where I need this type of game, and it's never lined up. So I have it installed. I've had it installed via Game Pass since it released, and I haven't started it up because I know once I do, like, I know I'll love it. I know it'll be chill time.
Oh yeah.
I just haven't ever gotten around to it.
There was an old lady who lived in a shoe, and you get to fucking power wash her entire shoe house. That is the end.
Oh,
that is the proper end to that fable. That's all I've ever wanted.
So
there was an old lady who lived in a shoe, and she paid a power washer to come, and that power washer is you.
Hell yeah. I like the rhyme.
That's how I do it, baby.
No, so my wife, whom I love, has been gently and increasingly not so gently asking, hey, do you think that you could come up with a hobby that helps the family? Because, like, my hobbies are, like, playing video games, fantasy football, whatever. But, like, no, that's not true. Because one of her hobbies is, like, woodworking. She loves to refinish, paint, even build wood projects.
That's great for her. That happens to line up in that way.
I am intentionally not aligning myself with what you are saying because she is right. So, like, an example hobby would be, like, grilling, which I would love to get into grilling. Sure. The biggest upfront problem is spending the money on a grill and all the research and stuff. That isn't the whole point of this. All of this setup is just to make the joke that with her bringing this up of, like, hey, babe, it'd be great if you had hobbies that, like, actually helped the family out. If she walked into my office and saw me playing a video game where I clean shit, she would lose her mind. So, yeah.
It's worse than her walking in on you watching porn.
Oh, man. But I am greatly looking forward to the day that I actually do check out Power Wash Simulator because it seems amazing.
It is. And you can play it co-op.
On to August we go. Cult of the Lamb.
Mm-hmm.
What a video game.
Mm-hmm.
I love this video game.
It was good.
If there weren't a couple small / not so small problems that I had with this game, it would be a strong contender for, as we're talking about, our games of the year. It's so funny because, like, it's two video games mashed together, right? Like, you have the roguelike, you know, you're getting your weapons, you're getting your upgrades, pulling your cards, getting your special moves, killing dudes, beating the big demons. And then there's the, like, Animal Crossing part where you're designing a cute little place for all of your cult followers to live. And it's all wrapped in this really fun aesthetic of the blood and gore and guts and dark demons with cute little chibi drawn kind of. It reminds me a lot of what was that game that you love to play?
Oh, I was gonna say Happy Tree Friends.
Oh well, yeah, definitely that, but like more the part of the tone. It was around the same time. The Don't Starve.
Oh,
it reminds me a lot of Don't Starve, where it's like a cutesy visual style, but like really dark themes and like kind of scary themes going on. But it was funny playing through the game. I like completely maxed out my cult before I even got to the halfway point of the game. Like, because obviously, you know, there are resources that you can only there. So there are 4 different sort of levels that you can grind your way through that all lead to a boss. And then once you beat the boss, you can go back and play those to get resources again to, you know, grind for gold or for food or other resources and kind of can play them endlessly. Yeah. And so I don't even think I had beaten the second one before I maxed out like my character leveling up, the stuff that you could build at the cult. Like I had cult followers that were like level 15 because I had given them the necklace that makes them live until they're 150 and was doing all the rituals to make them go 3 days without having to eat, go 3 days without having to sleep. Let me give them mushrooms on top of that to make them extra productive and not get sad when I'm not feeding them, and then they all vomit at the end. And like that part of the game was so fun that I was barely even doing the roguelike part and actually progressing the story forward. So then eventually I got to the point where like I didn't have anything else to do. So I went and did that and beat the game and loved my time with it. My biggest problem was the performance of the game. I had so many technical issues in the late game. Because, you know, you go through these day cycles where every day you go and you can preach a sermon, you can do rituals to, you know, level up the happiness or get gold from all your followers, or as I mentioned, like make them go 3 days without sleeping, whatever. I would, if I did more than one ritual in a day, the game would bug out, and I would have to hard quit out of the game and reload it and start that day over again. 100% of the time it happened. The only way that I could fix it is by going into the church, doing a ritual, fully backing out, and then immediately going back in and clicking in and doing a different ritual, and then completely backing out, going back in and making that the cycle. Because once you do your sermon for the day, you can't do more rituals after you leave the church.
Right.
And that was the first problem. When I tried to solve it, that's what I tried to do. And I was like, shit. Once you do the sermon, you can't do more rituals. And so that was kind of how I had to back my way into it. I also had multiple occasions where something would bug out in the actual dungeon crawling part. Like, one time I picked up a weapon, but I didn't have it. So, like, once I entered the next room, I couldn't attack because I no longer had the weapon. And, like, little things like that kept happening to me, which was extremely, extremely tedious. There was a lot of having to back out of the game and reloading and starting the days over. And that sucked.
Yeah. I didn't get any of that stuff on PC. I wonder if that was like a console problem or something.
Yeah, it's possible.
That's weird.
But yeah, I did. It's funny. I like measure how much I love a game so often by like how many other trophies did I get. And I went ahead and got the platinum in this game, which required me to beat all the bosses without getting hit, which became extremely tedious because it's a roguelike. Yeah. And you need the right combination of the right kind of weapon and the right kind of special. And, I had to unlock all of the capes because there's one that's a trophy, but also there's a cape you get where as you defeat enemies, you do X% more damage per enemy you kill. But if you get hit, it resets to 0. And that's like the most efficient way to because you have to beat the boss without getting hit. So it doesn't matter if you get hit. So basically you just grind out, get the right type of weapon, get the right type of cards, which are all randomly generated, which can be frustrating. Get the right type of special, grind out a bunch of the enemies until you get like 70-80% extra damage, and then go into the boss and cross your fingers because a lot of the bosses, there's a lot of shit. It'd be like 2 of the bosses in particular are like bullet hell levels, where they're shooting out the orange, yellow globs of whatever, and it's hard to dodge. And you just, there was one, it took me probably 4 hours. I'm not proud. I'm not proud. I'm like, it should not have taken me that long. But part of it is like, you go into a dungeon, it's the wrong weapon. So you have to quit out to the main menu and reload it again to get the right. And that is very, very tedious.
Jeez.
I'm glad I waited until the very end to do that, because it would have ruined my enjoyment of the game if I tried to do it as I was going.
Yeah.
But because I had already done all the fun shit, I had already done everything, unlocked everything else. Once I beat the final boss at 2 a.m. when I had to work the next morning, I fist pumped. And I haven't gone back to the game, and I can at least look back on it like I loved it.
All right.
So I rambled a lot about that game, but what did you think about it?
I liked it a lot. I had I think the random element of it eventually kind of started frustrating me a little too much. I didn't end up beating it, I think, because of that. Also, I was streaming it, and it got to the point where it was like, well, I don't want to play it when I'm not streaming because that's weird.
Yeah.
But I also don't feel like streaming right now, so I'll just not play it. And then I just stopped playing it. But yeah, it was really good when I was playing it.
Right.
But I don't have a desire to go back and finish it because I feel like I've seen most of the game and I know what it's doing, and I got the thing out of it, and I'm happy with that.
There's not a ton of story anyway.
Right.
Like, you're trying to beat the
it's
demon,
pretty
so
obvious
you can help your demon come back.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious what's going to happen.
Right. It's like the fun part of the quote-unquote story was the interactions with your followers, like finding a favorite follower and doting on them, and giving them all the rights, and then sacrificing them to the demon god at the end and collecting their meat and then feeding it to your other followers. Like, that part of it was fun in a very gross way.
And that was one of the fun things about streaming it too, is like the people watching, like their username, like they get a villager or a cult member with their name on it. And so it's like my buddy Ambient Potato, he's running around, I'm making him shovel shit, like, right. Or like, you know what, buddy, you're not looking so hot, I think it's about time we sacrifice you for the good of the colony.
Well, and like there was a huge variety of the style of the villager, like the type of creature that they are, and the different colors and markings, and that made it always really fresh. Because I loved to randomize early on. I would always hit the randomize button and make them, but then as I kind of got farther in, I wanted to pick out like, in the late game, there's a hidden one you unlock that it's the head it's like a pile of shit. And so I made like 3 or 4 followers in a row. I made them all shit heads of different colors. Nice. And like that kind of thing is just really fun to do.
Yeah. It's a good game.
All right. Tell me about Tinykin.
Yes.
This is a game that I've really, really wanted to check out.
Tinykin is a bunch of 2D sprites in a 3D environment. And it's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and Pikmin. And that's basically the game, except it has a lot of like quality of life things that Pikmin doesn't have. It's kind of a collectathon puzzle solving game where you have different little Tinykin that are of different colors that perform different functions. Each level that you go to, it's kind of like a new area in Pikmin where you kind of start fresh and run around the area and find more Pikmin, and then finding more Pikmin allows you to do more things. Tinykin's the same way. Each new area you go into, you start by roaming the area, getting a sense for the layout, and finding all of the easy-to-get Tinykin, which then enable you to do more things in the environment and get more Tinykin and eventually complete the objective, but also along the way finding all of the hidden things and all that. And I found everything in the game. That's the first time I've done that in a long time, just because I was having so much fun playing it. There's a lot of really great traversal options. You can float around by using a bubble thing that you're upgrading as you find and unlock stuff. There are zip lines to zip through the levels really, really quickly. And the level design is fantastic. There are a lot of hidden areas that are exciting to find because, there's always going to be some upgrade currency at the end of it that helps you get, more bubble time or whatever. You can float longer, or more Tinykin that will enable you to find out a new area, and everything's animated really well. So you're causing things to happen. Again, you're a tiny miniaturized person in a larger than life world, and so you're going through this interior of this house. There's a story that is a little melancholy but is interesting. And it was one of the first games I played on my Steam Deck. It was perfect for my Steam Deck. I could pick it up, play for half an hour, 45 minutes in a level, looking for stuff, and I could fully complete an area and then set it down. And that would take maybe an hour or so to fully complete an area, find all the items in it. And it was just a really, really freaking great time. And it didn't overstay its welcome. It wasn't too long. I feel like it had just the right number of areas. Every area was themed differently, and the writing was really charming and fun, and I dug the aesthetic of it. It was terrific. Tinykin,
nice,
fucking solid, man. It was a good game.
If I can recommend a game to you, it came out in 2021. The Wild at Heart. It is. I don't know why I came across it, but I did, and I played it. Maybe it might be a PS Plus game, or maybe a Game Pass. I don't recall, but it's very Pikmin inspired. It's less involved than what you're describing in terms of like the puzzles, but it's very Pikmin in like you have a bunch of different types of these little followers that you need a certain quantity to do a certain type of action. But it's kind of similar visual aesthetic to Cult of the Lamb minus the demon shit, but it's that very cutesy sort of 80s sort of style to it. Just super cute. I really enjoyed it. It's not terribly long, but it's really fun.
Yeah,
I had a good time
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, that's totally...
It's definitely, like, I kind of equated a little bit to Stranger Things because of the 80s aesthetic. It's not as horror as Stranger Things is, but it's got some dark, weird...
Yeah, it's where the wild things are.
100%.
It totally looks like that.
Great comparison. Absolutely, yes. But yeah, it's good. And I mean, if you're into those types of games, like I said, there's less gameplay in it than it sounds like Tinykin, but I had a really good time with it. That was one of my long list of backlog games over the last couple of years.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Cool.
Well, cool. The next 2 months are all you. So let's try to race through these as we cross the 2-hour mark.
Sure.
Because there's a lot more stuff.
Yeah, so September was The Last of Us Part 1, that remake of the first Last of Us game. It is that game, but
what's The Last of Us? What is that video game?
It's just one of the best games ever made. It's fine.
They never made a sequel to it, right?
Yeah, actually, the sequel was incredible. Very divisive for some reason. I think because people have bad taste, but it was just absolutely incredible. Blew me away.
Maybe it was divisive because like they made you play as an unlikable character for 20 hours, and they were so far up their own ass trying to convince you to like her, and they really fucking failed at it.
Huh.
But I feel like if they were going to make the game, and like if you played as Ellie and they had some like more like larger open spaces, that sounds like a really, really good video game.
Well, it doesn't sound like you played it, so you should probably stop talking about it then, since you don't know.
No, it is funny, and like that is unfortunately a thing that we can't do, because you and I have had so much sneer quote discourse about The Last of Us Part 2 when we didn't have the podcast, and it's probably good that we didn't do the podcast when we talked about The Last of Us.
We would have stopped doing the podcast.
Yes, that is a game that we can't agree to disagree on.
No, it is,
but it's fun.
It is it is a two-party system in this here. Like you either I love it and you super don't, and so
yeah.
No, that's not fair. Two shall meet.
That isn't fair. I have a laundry list of negatives about that game, but I still would have rated it like an 8 out of 10. I don't hate that game, but the things that I hate about that game, I feel so passionately about. So tell me about the remake of the first game.
It's so good.
Which, much like the sequel was unnecessary, this game seems very unnecessary.
Your Honor,
regardless of
objection, leading the witness.
Whoa. Regardless of the quality of Part 2, whether you like it or not, no one wanted a sequel to that game. No one needed a sequel to the first game. The ending of the first game is one of the best endings in any work of fiction I have ever experienced, and it is completely undone by the existence of a second game. Even if the second game was the best game ever made, I would have been annoyed.
All right, look, so The Last of Us Part 1 remake, it's really good because...
So let's talk about Abby.
They introduce all of the really amazing accessibility features that they put into Last of Us Part 2. They bring to Part 1, which I think is a really important thing that enables a lot of differently abled gamers to kind of go back and play that first one, in a way that they weren't able to or may not have had the access to do before, which I think is really good. It fidelity wise, it looks incredible. It's one of those situations where you go back and you play a game and you go, this looks like how I remember. This looks like how I remember it looking.
Yes.
Whereas if you actually go back and play the thing, you're like, this doesn't look as good as I remember looking. But honestly, the first Last of Us, the PS4 version of the original Last of Us looks really good. That HD remaster.
I played it before Part 2 came out.
Yeah.
It looked really good on PS4.
This looks like orders of magnitude better, and the difference is in the performance capture. They really hit on that big in the kind of the marketing push leading up to the release for this, which again, obviously they timed this release to kind of keep the fervor of Last of Us going while the television show's getting ready to air. So that was another reason why they made it. But there are a lot of subtleties that they capture in this that are not present in the original that I think play really, really, really well and it adds a lot. As someone who cares about acting, it adds a lot for me personally. So that's Last of Us Part 1. We're going to move on from Last of Us for forever. Grounded 1.0.
I will eventually play Part 1. Because I want to see it on a PS5 and experience it and see if my memory matches some of the small gameplay tweak things that they did. I'm not going to pay full price for it. That's my big stake in the ground.
I think that's 100% fair.
So we eventually will talk about it is what I am saying.
Look forward to it. Grounded 1.0 came out in September as well. That's a game I had played in early access, like early access, and then didn't play it for a while. Played it on 1.0. Terrific game. Fantastic survival game. Again, another survival game with a story component that they've added over time. Right. That is a lot of fun. It's a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in the backyard. Obsidian is publishing it. Some Obsidian people are working on it too, I believe, from a development standpoint, I think. Or maybe I have that backwards. Maybe Obsidian is developing and someone else is publishing. But it's terrific. It's got a great loop, good progression. They're still introducing balance tweaks and stuff here and there, but feature wise, it is complete and people should play it. It's on Game Pass. There's no reason not to. So that's it for September, those two games. October, Overwatch 2 released. If we want to talk about unnecessary sequels, Overwatch 2, it's just all they did was make Overwatch 1 unable to be purchased, and then people who launch Overwatch 1 and updates to Overwatch 2. It's not actually another game, it's just an update for Overwatch 1, but we're going to call it 2.
But it's free to play.
It's free to play and
yeah.
Whatever.
So I mean, but yeah, it's they made it a sequel to justify the back end changes that they wanted to for monetization purposes.
Yes, and they needed a marketing push for a headline. Like,
didn't they also change it from like 5v5 to 4v4 or vice versa?
I think it was 6 down to 5 or something.
Okay,
or yeah, maybe 5 to 4. I don't know. Yeah, they did.
Did you play the first game much?
Yeah, I played a bunch of the first one. I played a little bit of this, and I was like, hey, that's the same. I'm done.
It's the same. Yeah.
Again, I don't play competitive multiplayer games anymore. I think I had already established that on the podcast previously, and that has not changed over time. This next one, Scorn, released in October, and I streamed probably, I think, the first half of the game. I need to go back and complete it, and I think we'll talk about that later, but it's, heavily inspired by H.R. Giger, Arceus, and it is
Abby.
It is it is the squelchiest game of the year. Right. It's just it's that art. If you don't know who H.R. Giger is, the person that the Aliens art was. I don't remember if he was the art designer on Aliens or if Aliens.
He designed some of the he designed the alien.
Right. Okay. And then like some of the xenomorph like ships and stuff and how all organic that is. It's like that the game. Everything like there's no dialogue. You play this mute humanoid who is like plugging biotic components into their arms, and it's nasty and disgusting. And really disturbing and gross, but there's something going on, and it's like intriguing in a nasty way. So I look forward to finishing that, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But Scorn, fascinating. I believe that's also on Game Pass. Plague Tale Requiem also released, also on Game Pass. I was playing it on I have an Xbox One. But I'm not about to play anything on it because fuck that. So I play stuff on PC Game Pass. And I was playing Plague Tale Requiem when I was having pooter problems. So I was playing it with my partner, and we were enjoying it, but the frame rate was just terrible in certain sections.
Yeah, I think that game's pretty taxing.
It is,
if I recall people talking about it.
Very much so. And so obviously when you have a processor that can only run at like 30% capacity, it's not going to run very well. So I look forward to going back to that as well now that my pooter problems are largely solved.
I loved the first game. I haven't, because I played that game in 2020, I think, and it came out in 2019. I haven't published it, but I have rewritten my 2019 Game of the Year post to include a Plague Tale because that game was so incredible. Yeah. I am super hyped for the second game. I know they changed. It's much bigger in scope, which I don't know that I will enjoy as much.
I don't know that really bears out for much. It's still pretty linear. It's still it's still pretty focused. I think how bigger they mean like in scope in terms of where you're going and the size of the story and things like that and the events that are happening. The number of rats being one of the things.
One of the reviewers that I really love, Skill Up, he kind of equated it to, it's more of an Uncharted story now. There's more bombast than there was in the first game. But I also know that it's, I'm sure, still exceptionally dour.
Yeah.
And I need to be like in the right mindset to commit to like 20 hours of
Sure.
that.
Yes, it is absolutely still that. It does have, like, you know, some of those larger, Uncharted's like, look, I love Uncharted.
Not literally
I love Uncharted, but I feel like that person is using that in a like almost a derogatory way, and I would not necessarily agree with that from what I have played so far.
Okay.
It seems like there are some sequences where it's like, yo, that's a lot of rats. You gotta run, boy. You gotta run. That's too many. That is too many rats.
Yeah.
But you know, those are fun. Those are fun and crazy.
Sure.
And I feel like maybe that's what they're talking about. It's because like that does feel very you know, here's this crazy stuff happening. We're just running away from
piece.
it. Yeah. Set piece stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
There some more of that. Also releasing in October, Vampire Survivors, or released in October, Vampire Survivors. This is a game that you don't really play. It plays you. All you have to do is you can play this game with one hand. You move. It is a run based, like a roguelike, level to level. You different characters you could pick, and you are randomly getting items and equipment that have synergies that you're figuring out as you play the game. You are, as you make your runs, you're gaining currency to make yourself a little bit more powerful at the start, give yourself a little bit of an edge. And there are some secrets in the levels that you can kind of ferret out and then unlock new levels because of that, or new characters to play as with different abilities or starting weapons. It's interesting. So the gameplay is just you walking around. It's reverse bullet hell.
Mm-hmm.
There are hordes of enemies coming.
You are the hell.
You are the bullet hell. You are causing the bullets. And the enemies are flooding in from all sides, and you're, you know, just fucking mowing them down. And it gets to be like indiscernible. Like if you get the right combination of things happening, there are so many things going on the screen, so many enemies, the game is chugging, and it's perfect. It's all the things you want in a video game. It is like it's just a straight IV feed of like heroin. Like it's just incredible.
I know it just got added recently to Game Pass, and I really, really want to play it. I'm sure it's I imagine it's like better with mouse and keyboard.
No, it doesn't matter. It's good because it's just, I mean, I'd say it might be better analog stick on a controller. Because with a keyboard, you have your WASD, but you get a little more.
In a weird way, I equate this game with Power Wash Simulator. Like it's like a Zen state kind of game.
Flow state.
And that makes it sounds so appealing.
It is, yeah. And this one's really good in that, you know, the maximum amount of time you're going to be spending in a level is just over half an hour for various reasons. There is a timer, and things start getting crazier and crazier, and there's like you hit 30 minutes and yippee, a thing happens that usually ends the run. But it's phenomenal, and it's gotten a lot of updates and new content and stuff, and you know it's barely a video game, but it's also simultaneously a fantastic video game. It's also the most Totally. And then COD Modern Warfare 2, the reboot Modern Warfare game, came out in October. I played that campaign and really enjoyed it. Not every Call of Duty campaign has been fantastic. There are some that have, you know, tried things and have not landed. This one tries for some stuff, like some more Battlefield-esque open areas in which you can kind of approach things however you want, and I think it does that pretty well in this one. There's also, you know, some fantastic set piece moments. The narrative actually makes sense this time around. I feel like usually they're a little incoherent beyond just rah kill terrorists. This one's a little more coherent and makes a little bit more sense as you go through it. And it was, you know, about 6 hours, which is the right length. And I fucking loved it. I will replay that campaign probably this next year because I liked it so much. I touched the multiplayer for about 3 hours and then was like, yep, can't do this.
Oh, wow.
Cannot do this.
Yeah.
I refuse to do this to myself. I will not. I cannot. And then one of my friends made me play Warzone with them because it has that new the new Tarkov like mode. I forget what it's called, but tried that and was like, I don't get what the point of this is. Man, wouldn't this be great if there weren't other people here and it was just AI and you could go in and do runs and just fight AI with your friends? Wouldn't that be great?
Sounds good to me.
Yep. But that's, Call of Duty. And hey, I like those campaigns a lot. And there's still something about like Soap McTavish and those characters still stick with me somehow in a weird way.
Captain Price is still
Price,
like the OG.
Yeah, something about those guys and like they're in it and they're badass and they're great.
So we don't have time to talk in depth about the first Modern Warfare remake because I played that whenever it hit like $30, I went ahead and bought it and I literally only played the single player. And had so much fun. Yeah. Like there were sections of it that I did not enjoy as much.
Like crawling around, but like the kid in the house and stuff.
Oh, that was brutal. Yeah. But the big reveal of it is a prequel to the original Modern Warfare was such a fun twist that I totally did not see coming. I'm like legit extremely excited to play through the Modern Warfare 2 campaign because of how...
Right, you have not played this.
I have not played this because... Again, I'm not going to pay full price. And I'm curious to see when and how and if it gets reduced in price because I know they're not doing a Call of Duty next year.
Yeah.
Like, I want to wait until it's $30 because I don't want to pay fucking 50, 60, 70 bucks to play a 6-hour campaign. I'm not willing to do that. So I'll eventually get to it. I am legit really excited about it because of how well the first one did for me.
Yeah. I know. I think this one is, it's paced incredibly well. Like I said, the story is coherent in a way that some of the past ones have not been. I think, it does a lot of different types of gameplay things, and each one sticks around for just the right amount of time.
Yeah.
I thought it was fantastic.
Like, I got the first one because I was like, I can burn through this in 2 afternoons and it just fills that first-person shooter need. Like, I had no expectations. And it's the best Call of Duty campaign I've played since Modern Warfare 3.
Yeah.
Like, I loved it.
Yeah.
So, I'm excited.
I will say, I just realized, of course I love this campaign because there's crafting in it. For a segment, you craft stuff. So, of course I fucking love it. I'm a mark.
Amazing.
Mark for crafting.
Amazing.
So that's all of October.
Nice. Well done.
Thank you.
Now I can actually talk about something that I played.
Sure.
Because you know what released in November? Fucking God of War Ragnarok.
Oh,
okay. You'll have your time to talk Harvestella, which is another game I've never heard of, so I'm excited to hear about it.
Okay.
So God of War Ragnarok. We're closing in now on 2.5 hours of this fucking thing. Yeah. So we can't have a full conversation about God of War, unfortunately.
You know what, dude? It's been 3 years and 3 months. People can, people can grin and bear it with us here if we go a little long.
That is true. I mean, we're already... I remember when we started talking about, like, with more tight, we can aim more for, like, 90 minutes.
Yeah, on a typical episode. This is our first podcast episode back.
Yeah, I think on a regular episode we'll be under 2 hours. But yes, you're right. It's more that, like, we could devote an entire hour to talking about God of War Ragnarok, and we cannot devote an entire hour talking about God of War Ragnarok.
Right.
I think, like, the biggest thing... That's not true. The first thing I will say about God of War Ragnarok is that I played the first game when my wife was pregnant with my daughter. And that game's story affected me in a way that no game had since The Last of Us, the first game, did. And I didn't have kids, but that father-son story and the growth of both characters, and especially that middle section when Atreus is the biggest prick you've ever seen.
I
know that's playing. When you fell off. What did you even finish that game?
I went back to it later and I beat it. Yep.
Okay. Because I know at the time you were done.
Yeah.
You were stubborn, Kyle. Fuck this game.
Not stubborn.
Because of how annoying he was.
That wasn't me being stubborn. I was like having a bad time.
Yes, that's correct. I know you pretty well, and some of it was stubborn Kyle refusing to get over that thing. But you're right. If it's ruining the experience, that's one thing. It was more like, for me, it was more like, come on, like, power through it. The rest of this game is so amazing. Just get over that hump. But that's besides the point. Like, that game affected me in such a deep, meaningful way before I had kids. But the context of, I'm gonna have a kid. I'm going to experience some semblance of this father-child relationship. Hopefully not literally the same style of relationship. Hopefully I'm a better dad. But just that, like, the difficulty, right, of having a child like that, it touched me. This game was so refreshing, and I did not expect at all the ease of the relationship between Kratos and Atreus in the beginning of the game, obviously. And we won't cover a ton of spoilers because it's still relatively recent. But the game certainly goes some places where there's a lot of problems between them. But, like, it feels like a legit father and son that love and respect and trust one another that I did not expect at all. I thought that that's how this game would end. And so playing through that journey and sort of the ups and downs there, having 2 kids and now having a son and being able to insert myself in that way was like a whole other level. I think overall, the experience of the first game's story and the way that the events unfolded hit me harder because it was so fresh. Like, taking the character of Kratos in that direction was so genius that it can't possibly have been topped. And this game doesn't top it in that sense. But the depth of the story and the other characters that you get to meet beyond just Mimir, the way that they develop Freya is so fucking awesome. She's like maybe my favorite character in Ragnarok. And like all, Thor and Odin and what's the Thor's daughter's name? Thrud,
yeah.
She's fantastic.
Awesome.
Like the characters are so great in this game. Yeah, I mean, I'll stop there because I don't want to just talk and then you talk. But like, what did you think about just the story and the way that the narrative goes in comparison to the first game?
Yes,
knowing that you had so many issues with the first game.
Right. I think one of the, in hindsight, one of my pain points with the first game was that a lot of it was, and they had some humor around this, and that was fine, but a lot of the conflict between Kratos and Atreus in the first one was not only that Atreus was a little shit, but that Kratos just couldn't understand Atreus.
Yeah.
And that, I think, frustrated me more because it also led to Atreus being more of a shit because he had a dad who didn't understand him. This one, I feel like Kratos really does understand Atreus. The conflict for Kratos in this one is more about learning to live with an overactive, well, maybe not necessarily unjustified, but a hyperactive paternal instinct to protect his child, and but wanting like seeing the value in Atreus being free to make his own choices. And Kratos totally does that throughout the course of this game. Like, he lets him make his mistakes and make his choices, and they talk about that and all. Like, they talk about stuff, I think, is in this one.
He's actually a dad.
Yeah, totally.
He's not like in the first game, he's like a drill sergeant.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like he's a dad in this game. Yeah. And that was it hit me so hard.
Yeah, and I think that hit me a lot harder because of how he is in the first game. And I think in some ways, because I enjoyed the original God of War games so much, I needed that first game. I needed the
to
growth.
Reset you.
Yeah. I needed Drill Sergeant. I needed to see how poor of a fit Drill Sergeant dad Kratos was throughout the course of that game, see him make a little bit of growth, and then make that transition to this new Kratos. I fucking love this new Kratos. He's a G. He is like one of my favorite people. He is so awesome.
Yes.
He shows true growth, and like, despite his years and despite his experiences and time on his multiple planes of existence or whatever, then I like that, because in reality, a lot of people with a lot of experience tend to stagnate in their growth and not be able to adapt. And that frustrates me. So to see Kratos, who is someone getting on in his years, even though he doesn't necessarily show it because he's like sort of God and then wasn't God and is sort of God, like he's been around for a while. Like to see him make that growth, I think is a fun thing and is rewarding in its own right. And like also in this game, Atreus is sort of like high school age, and he's really figuring it out, and more of his conflicts are less. It's less conflicts with his emotion and more conflicts with his reason. And I'm used to working with high schoolers, like, and that's more my shit. Like that, I understand those kids at that level, and working with them. And so I felt more of a connection to Atreus this time around as well because of that. And so,
interesting.
Like I was enjoying the main story so much that I didn't do any of the side stuff. I just wanted to do all the main stuff because I wanted to hit it. And I also didn't want to get burned out on it because it had been a little while since I really dug into like an open world game and tried to get a bunch of stuff. And I didn't want to burn out trying to get everything. So I just narrowed my focus to the main story, which I think had led me to miss some pretty cool stuff. But, you know, it was more important to me that I actually finish it and see it through, which I did, and loved every fucking second of it.
That makes a ton of sense, because we haven't been able to talk like in depth about, because I remember when we were texting about it and you were like, oh no, I didn't do that thing. Or like, oh, once we like that last big open area, the big canyon, which really has two different open areas inside of one open area. And you're like, oh yeah, I really didn't do anything in there.
Right. I was afraid I was going to burn out.
That makes a ton of sense. Because, like, if the main thing that you're getting out of it is that main story, I mean, I spent 6+ hours just in that one open space at the end, and no story thing was happening. There were, side stories, right? But for me, it was the combat is so good in that game. Like, a lot of people complain that it doesn't feel hard enough outside of a few big set piece things, which like I think that there's plenty to that because the game gives you so many options. You have so many special attacks and different weapons that you can use in different environments. But the play was what was so fun for me. Like intentionally using different special attacks, intentionally using different weapons and weapon combinations and switching back and forth with them. Not because I needed to beat an enemy encounter, but because that's what was fun. It gives you so many ways to create fun and experimentation, but you have to want to do that because you definitely do not have to.
Right.
Like you can you can just use the Blades of Chaos for 90% of that game and kill everything.
So I did not. I threw the axe at every enemy until it died the entire game.
Also a reasonable strategy.
And it was a lot of fun, dude. When I got the spear, I had a lot of fun throwing and detonating the spear as well. But I did basically those two things the entire game, except when I had to use the Blades of Chaos because I needed what was fire smart damage.
With the axe throwing too, like there are so many upgrades and different types of attacks to do with that.
They managed to make even that part of it interesting for me, who was only doing that thing.
And like, I'm bummed that I didn't really experiment with it until the late game, but throwing your axe and then running up to an enemy and doing a combination to draw the axe back into an attack combo felt so fucking good, dude. Like throwing my axe at a guy, beating another dude with my fists, and then finishing him off by drawing the axe in the middle of like a combo. It's perfection. When I first got this spear, I was like, I don't want this, man. There's plenty going on with the axe, with the Blades of Chaos, all the different types. Like, I didn't want to sit back and chuck shit the way that you were. Right. Like, that didn't seem
for
fun.
me, that was like the most exciting thing I'd gotten. I was like,
because that was the playstyle you chose. Yeah, that was the playstyle you chose. Right. That totally makes sense. But like once I started experimenting with it, and I didn't use it that often, I used it a lot on bosses, like against Heimdall, because they want you to use it. Like it was great against Heimdall. But I didn't use it a ton out in the open world, except for the special attacks. Because the certain special attacks, like there's a great one that's your light attack that's really focused on one enemy where you just jab the dude 90 times and it leaves the spear, so then you detonate. And there was another great, heavy special attack that's great for crowd control, where like you chuck it in the ground and then like 30 spears fall down from the sky in a huge area. And so, like, it was really good in certain situations for me. But I still defaulted to the blades and the axe for most of the time. I guess the last thing, like, that I felt I thought about a lot were the set piece moments. Because I felt like there were way less memorable moments in this game than the first one. Specifically, like, boss battles and, like, again, like the big set piece interactive things, not like the big story moments specifically, but like in the first game, the big fight against that first dragon,
right?
All of the individual dragon fights and like working your way up, those felt like huge momentous things. And there wasn't as much of that in this game, unless you sought it out, right? Like all the hidden bosses.
There is a dragon fight, but Kratos just kills it immediately.
Well, there are other, again, in that big open area, there are 3 dragons in that final open area that you do fight, but they're way less interesting fights and they're not particularly challenging. But yeah, I mean, to that end, the enemy variety is like 4x of what it was in the first game, which makes it so much more fun as well. But yeah, I like in general, kind of to my original point, it's hard to compare the like hype that you get while playing this game compared to the first, because the first was so singular and unexpected.
Yeah, it was out of nowhere.
Yeah, like it's impossible to replicate that, but I think they do smart things to overcome that. Like the whatever Heffelga jellyfish things, like those moments where you set them free. And did you do both of those?
No, the only thing I set free was the turtle.
Okay. I think you have to set one of them free for the main story. You didn't set the big jellyfish free in the Elven Realm?
I don't remember if I did.
Okay. Well, there are 2 of them, because then the second one is definitely optional. But when you set both of them free, because that's the whole point, is they're calling out to one another, and there's these huge, like, landmass size jellyfish, and you set them free and they go through this dance in the sky that you just stand and watch, and then slowly like they dissolve into a million small ones that look like stars in the sky, and it's like this beautiful moment where they're singing a song as it happens. The big jellyfish creatures are like, there were still moments that hit me, there just weren't as many, and I also felt like some of them were spoiled in the trailers. Like the moment with the giant wolves with the bow and arrow in the sky, where they like, he splits the sky. Like that was so awesome. Yeah. But having seen it in the trailer, like it just didn't hit the same.
I didn't remember anything that was in the trailer, so everything was new to me.
Well, that's nice. That's nice for you. Yeah. I thought the stuff like in Helheim, I thought like the really elongated fight with the giant wolf was cool and dynamic and varied. The biggest, I think maybe it's telling that we haven't specifically called it out, but I think the down parts for me were the places where you play as Atreus. Not from the story, because I loved all of his interactions when he's in Asgard, all that stuff. I was like craving for more story there. But the parts where you play as him, I found even easier, because they make it easy on purpose and just not terribly engaging. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who played the entire game ranged, whenever I got the opportunity to play as Atreus with like an actual bow, I was like, all right, fuck yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah. It's just because he has such so many fewer things at his disposal that like the combat scenarios didn't really feel that different to me. Again, because I intentionally experimented. Right. There isn't as much option there for Atreus. Right. That's so funny how the different play styles make us feel
played
so
it totally differently.
But yeah, I mean, incredible game. Yeah. Not surprised that it was incredible. I had zero fear. My only fear was that it would fall so short of the lofty expectations, but it for me totally hit them, just in different ways. compared to the first game.
I was afraid I was going to hate Atreus and it was going to ruin the game for me again. But like from the get-go, I was like, oh, he's like, this isn't like the next day. This is like some time removed. He's had time to grow, and they're actually like they're doing that well. And so kind of from the get-go, I was like, all right, okay.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And the ending of the game,
dude,
when Kratos looks at that last painting with him as like the goal,
dude,
just him, like his realization that he can have this future where people love him, which he has never felt. Oh, so beautiful.
Like fucking that music plays every time that chorus would come in. I was just like goosebumps.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking good.
Yeah, I decided to not go for the platinum in that one, mostly because like all of the like hidden bosses, I did probably 2/3 of them, and some of them took me 10 tries to beat the like the gravestone.
Yeah.
Did you do any of those?
I did one of them. It was like a sword or something.
Well, they're all different, and some of them like it's three guys, and so there were just a couple of them that I beat my head against 3 or 4 times and wasn't getting close, and I was just like, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
But I beat like all the again in that big open area. There are 2 of the like huge sort of 4-legged rhinoceros style enemies that I took those guys down, and like I did a lot of the side hidden bosses, but I didn't have the desire to do all of them.
Sure.
And again, kind of what you're talking, like I didn't want to burn myself out and have a negative final feeling about the game.
Right.
So I got what I wanted out of it.
Yeah. Oh, I totally did. I fucking loved it.
Tell me about Harvestella. This game I've never heard of. Yeah,
this is a Square Enix game. It's like a JRPG, but they mashed in like a farming simulator
of course
into it. This was at it was either like a Game Awards thing or it was an Xbox not Indie Showcase because it's Square Enix, but it was at like the Xbox Showcase E3 whatever, Summer Game Fest something. But it was like one of like 4 farming simulator games that were shown
right.
The same thing. But it's just a JRPG that is also a farming simulator, and neither half of that is particularly good or interesting.
All right.
And that's about all.
So not a game of the year contender.
No, that's about all I have to say about it.
As a follow-up to God of War Ragnarok.
Correct. Yes. It did not make my top 10.
Let's talk about Warhammer Darktide. Again, a game that my dude Skill Up talked a ton about, and I was really excited about it. And then I heard that the launch it was rough. Has been horrible.
It's been rocky.
As a live service game, which makes me like not. And they have delayed the console version indefinitely anyway. But that seems like it's a huge bummer.
Yeah. So I think there are some late game progression issues that I have heard about. I am nowhere near that. I've just been playing with friends every now and then. Again, I was having pooter problems, so my performance was terrible. So I look forward to going back to it now that my computer will actually run it. But it was a lot of fun. It almost makes me just want to go back and play Vermintide 2, though, instead.
Yeah. I have heard that reaction from people that loved Vermintide, and this seems like a step back in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about it. I like the gun. Well, I mean, okay, no, that's my issue. I don't like the guns. I like that there are guns.
Right, because Vermintide is purely melee, correct?
Yeah, I think like there's like a crossbow, something like there's very limited ranged options. There's casting magic and stuff ranged.
I see.
Stuff like that. But yeah, that's their like fantasy. Vermintide is their like actual Warhammer. This is like Warhammer 40K. For Darktide. So it is a little different in that respect. Aesthetically, it's really cool. It's just like industrial grunge. It's just wild. Like it looks so cool. It's like a mishmash of giant planet-sized machinery, and you're in the belly of these huge metal cities, and Like it's nasty and grungy, and it's fucking. It looks rad. It looks rad.
Like like the gothic industrial sort of thing. That aesthetic is so badass. Yes. Like we talk about Scorn as being like the organic. This is like opposite, the polar,
the complete
opposite.
Yeah.
And both are equally cool as hell.
Yeah. But like you'll be like crawling through these close duct things with like these like factory like viewport bridge rooms looking down at these areas, and you're running through and it's like poorly lit. There's steam and gas coming out of places and boiling vats of stuff and all this shit, and then you run around a corner and it's like mashed into all of these twisting pipes and crazy girders and stuff is like this gothic cathedral like mashed into it. Like it's just it's like all the machines grew out and around it and created a shell, and it looks incredible. It's so cool. But it's got some issues. Like a lot of your progression is gated behind RNG, because it's there's a random assortment of slightly better or worse guns in the shop that refreshes after pretty much every mission. And so like you may find something that's better, you may not, and also the amount of currency you're gaining on some of these things by doing missions is not a lot, so it takes a lot of grinding. There's a pretty decent range of areas you go through, objectives to do, stuff like that, and like there are modifiers on them and things like that change them up a little bit here and there. And there are ways to get more out of each run by accomplishing different objectives and doing harder versions and things like that. But the grind it seems pretty aggressive.
Thankfully, like that's stuff that they can tweak.
Yes, that's a balance.
Like it's not that it is forgivable necessarily. Or that's the wrong word. Not that it like makes it okay that it launched in this state, but it's way better to have fixable problems than unfixable problems.
Right, that's what it feels like.
Like if there was an inherent, like if I know you did say that you don't enjoy the shooting as much, but if like that was the main problem, that's a hard thing to fix.
It's more just that the guns aren't that satisfying or interesting. With the class that I chose basic soldier ass dude. So I think some of the guns that I have access to in my class are pretty run of the mill. Like there's like a really big dude, like a giant looking dude. And one of my friends was playing him, and he was getting like these crazy pipe shotgun things and like this grenade launcher that was launching like crazy shit. And he had an ammo box he could throw that would explode and stuff like that. Like there was some more interesting stuff there than just what I was being exposed to, but
assault rifle.
That's basically what it was. It was like, do you want a laser assault rifle or an assault rifle?
I mean, a laser assault rifle sounds pretty cool.
It was, know what? It was pretty cool. But then also, like, the RNG made it so that the one laser assault rifle that I could purchase at the time, the damage kind of sucks. So I've really got to hold down and use a bunch of my ammo, and ammo's limited.
That's why you got to log in every day, baby.
I know, right? Woo. Well, I'm not gonna fucking do that.
Hey, remember Destiny when you had to log in every Saturday to check what Xur had?
Fuck that. Instead, what I'll do is I'll wait 6 months and then I'll forget it exists. Wait 6 months. I'll see something about it, like, hey, Darktide's good now, and I'll go back in and play it then.
Nice. Maybe then it'll be on Xbox and we can play together.
Oh, right, yeah, because it's not on console. So that's Darktide.
Nice. Well, moving into December, we both have played.
We're almost there, man.
Oh yeah, almost there. We both have played High on Life. Yeah. Let's save that for last because we both played it.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about Callisto Protocol.
Oh, dude,
you and I have talked at length about this already, but yeah.
All right, I promise I'm gonna try and make this quick. I have a lot of thoughts about it. So it's Callisto Protocol, for those who may not be aware. I think most people are, but it's being directed by Glenn Schofield, who was formerly of Visceral Games, who made the first Dead Space. he was one of the lead designers on the first Dead Space. Partly in some degree responsible for a lot of the design decisions that went into that game, a lot of the inspiration, some of the themes and things like that. Some of the aesthetic, he had a hand in, all of like the decapitation, like the visceral fucking combat and stuff. He was there for that. And so Callisto Protocol originally started as a tie-in to the PUBG universe, which is fucking hilarious. It was Player Unknown's Battlegrounds, Callisto Protocol. I guess they did away with that at some point. It was still being developed in collaboration with the team behind PUBG that owns that IP or whatever. But I guess it was no longer set in the same universe. So here's kind of all right. So it is a Dead Space like. It has the diegetic user interface where everything is. There isn't a UI. It's all physically displayed on the character. His health is on a thing on his neck instead of his spine, because here we're legally distinct. But my issue with Callisto Protocol, and I have not beaten it, but I'm very close, I think, to beating it. I think I have like one chapter left. My issue with Callisto Protocol is that in every way, it is just slightly ever so inferior to Dead Space, and therefore I should just play Dead Space, especially with the remake coming out.
Yes.
So one thing that I think Dead Space always does really well is that even though you're trapped into this narrow corridors in the ship, it always gives you a good sense of where you are in the ship. You have a clear path. You have that, the ability to lay down the laser to tell you where the critical path is, where your objective is. So you know what's non-critical path. So there's side shit over here where I can get upgrade resources and more ammo and more survival horror resources lie in that direction. I should go there before going to the main objective. Callisto Protocol doesn't have that. They try to do some things in the environment that point you in the right direction. I don't know if I'm just fucking blind, but I feel like I'm missing all of that, and I'm constantly going the main path instead of the side path, and I have to backtrack, and the actual moving through the space is very slow. There's a lot of animation heavy, like sidling between things or crawling under things and through vents, and it takes a million years. That part of it is really slow.
Quick aside, we didn't talk about that part of it when it comes to God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah.
It seemed like there was way more of the lifting a rock, sidling
there
up
was
a
quite a bit,
and it was kind of bad.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of it.
Not like that part, but anyway.
Yeah. So there's that to the nth degree in Callisto Protocol. It's like after every room there is some sort of animation transition to the next area, and it's so slow. It looks good, if not a little samey throughout. You go through a few different areas.
The fidelity is very high. Like the facial animations and stuff.
Totally.
And part of it's because they got likenesses of the actors, but they look awesome.
Yeah, the game looks fantastic.
But it's like the art design is lacking.
Yes,
like it's just not.
It
not
lacks
that
spark. And the thing about Dead Space that was so unique was that Gothic influence. Everything was like a rib cage. Like it was. There was just something about, and the fact that there was this whole plot device around the Church of Unitology. I almost said Scientology. Same thing. Church of Unitology, and all this other stuff like. Having Gothic and religious undertones in the architecture and the construction of things, kind of like tied into that. Callisto Protocol's not necessarily that thoughtful, I guess, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, it just feels generic.
It is, yes.
In its like style.
Yeah. The combat is a lot more melee focused versus gun focused, which it's not terrible, but it has like a dodge system that's pretty foolproof once you learn it. All you have to do is be moving in a certain direction when the enemy tries to swing at you, and they will miss. And it has a couple of boss encounters sprinkled in that are completely unfair and almost unplayably bad. Like one of them was, it's a one-hit kill boss no matter what, so it will kill you if it hits you, which normally isn't a problem when you're dodging. However, there's not enough time in between its attacks to reliably get shots off or reload your weapons. So like you would get one hit killed just trying to get a single shot off in between its attacks. Like, it just wasn't designed very well. And that's what I'm afraid the final boss is going to be like when I go like to actually beat the game, is that it's going to be some unfair, frustrating thing that sucks. Because I've kind of heard some rumblings about that. So like, part of me is like, do I even finish it? But I've enjoyed it enough to keep going, because I think there's a foundation for a story there that is somewhat interesting. They just don't do anything with it. They're not providing you the same context, the spatial awareness that you get in Dead Space. It's not as smartly constructed. You know, the different elements of it aren't tying together in a meaningful way that, you know, elevates the experience in any kind of significant way. So it's generic. It's you know,
it's like, and I have not played the game. I have seen so much discourse about it from a lot of the YouTube folks that I interact with, hearing you talk about it, seeing like the conversations online and watching reviews and whatnot. And it's just like, this is going to sound harsh. It's not intended as harsh, but given the context that this is the fucking guy that made Dead Space, it is a little harsh. It just feels like this game is lacking a lot of like game design 101.
A little bit, yeah. It makes me
like even like, I hear a lot of people like on the Nextlander podcast, they're talking about, hey, the combat works fine with the melee because of how, you know, you dodge and then hit, dodge and then hit. But if they throw several enemies at you at once, the camera is set up in a way where you can't see behind you. There's no quick turn like there is in God of War. And like, there's that animation priority. You get stuck in an animation, so you can get hit or get shot from an enemy shooting acid at you. And it's just like, it's like they didn't think about that when they were designing how the combat would work.
And when you're crouching, it's sometimes, depending on the weapons you have equipped, you can't see your health.
Yeah, and this is a harsh word, but a lot of it feels ineptly designed. Like, it feels like it was designed by people that don't know what they're doing. They don't know the basics of making a video game. And that, it doesn't make sense. Not just that it's Glenn Schofield who made the original, but like, he ran Sledgehammer Games. They were making Call of Duty. Like, he's been in the biz for a long time. Yeah. And it isn't problems, because I know this game had a lot of issues technically when it launched too. Yeah. And certainly, like, there were reports about crunch, and I know, like, it was delayed multiple times and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure there was a lot of problems that were inherent to it being rushed out the door that they could have fixed. But a lot of the problems are from the conceptual phase. That, again, it's like, how did no one raise their hand when you were talking about this? It's baffling to me that some of the criticisms levied against this game exist. Because it just feels like a game made by people that haven't made a video game before in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It's like the beginning of the game, you have all these opportunities to fly over the installation you're going to be spending the rest of the game in, and they don't. Like, so you don't ever get the flyby to understand the layout or anything.
You don't have the context.
There aren't really any maps littered around the place. And, like, you get, spoiler alert, at the beginning of the game, you get thrown in prison for blah, 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 space crimes that you didn't commit.
Oh, no, not space crimes.
Yeah, space crimes. God damn it, Cass, space crimes. And I was expecting there to be, like, oh, here's, you know, a montage of a week or so of you being in prison, meeting these characters you're going to be interacting with, you know, growing close to a character that probably dies and whatever outbreak's going to occur, whatever happens, whatever. Like, but there's none of it's like you're in there for like a few hours and then shit hits the fan. So you don't ever like, there could have been so many opportunities to like see these areas you're going through when like the power's off or people are dead and things are ruined, to see them in working order. And then it increases the impact when you go through them later. You go, oh, this is the lunchroom where I talked to so-and-so, and like, look, it's all fucked up now. Like, you just don't ever get any of that. You don't get the before, you only get the after.
Right.
And that feels like a hugely missed opportunity. I think part of it's because they want to get you in the game really fast, but what it does is it cuts out any kind of like a narrative connection to any other of the other characters that are present.
Well, and I've heard that it's not that long of a game, right? It's like in like the 10-hour range.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
So there would have been plenty of time to do some of that establishment up front. Yeah. And like the tone setting, that's what was so great about the first Dead Space game, to your point. Like, they set that shit up so well. It's such a bummer because I was so hyped about this game, and then the first red flag, well, there were many red flags before this, but the biggest red flag was when they didn't allow reviews until like the day of release. Yeah. And that's always a bad sign. Yeah. And that's why I was like, I'm not buying, I'm going to wait and see what reviews are like. And then the reviews were mixed to bad about the technical performance and particularly the combat. A lot of people have not enjoyed to the, we're like, I'm not going to play this. I wouldn't even say that like, oh, I might check it out. Like I won't, because the combat sounds bad. And that's such a bummer because I was hyped about it. It not to the same scale, but it reminds me of Anthem, where like I was so pumped. Everything they were showing was great. They were saying all the right things, but the things they weren't talking about were bad.
Yeah.
And the things they weren't talking about in Callisto Protocol, it seems like is where the game fails.
Yeah.
So it's a bummer, but I'm excited about the Dead Space review.
Yeah, so apparently they're doing significant work on it. Like it's going to be more
all of
open.
the stuff they've shown. Yeah.
And, like, you're
all
going to
the
be able
stuff
to kind of go through the
great.
ship and go outside and around it and stuff. Like you could do in the second one a little bit and in the third one. So yeah, pretty cool stuff coming up. I also played Chained Echoes the month of December, and that's a pixel old school style RPG, standard turn-based combat. I don't think I will play any more of it. I put about 8 or 9 hours into it. I don't think I'll play any more because the leveling
that's a good chunk.
Yeah, the leveling system, it's not a traditional XP system. It's like it's kind of gear based, so you don't really level your characters. You're just getting better gear, which is weird for like an old school turn based RPG. And I don't know that it doesn't feel like it gives me a lot of agency over how the characters are developing. It doesn't feel like it's not giving me the agency to grind a little bit to over level for something that I perceive as difficult and get through a thing. You know, you have to be a little more tactical with it and stuff like that because you're dealing with limited resources. Also, I was running up against some like more difficult enemies that they throw in your way that are optional, that you're meant to come back and fight. And I was like, it's kind of like a weird, I don't know that I want to do that. Like, I'm not going to remember to come back or be motivated to come back. And it's just a lot of like kind of blasé things about it. The writing was fine. The setup was okay. It wasn't, I was looking for a very specific thing when I launched it and started playing it, and it was not that thing. And I think that's, that's okay, but it's not what I was looking for at the time. So I stopped playing it.
Right.
So that's Chained Echoes. People seem to really like it. I will say that. It's just not what I was looking for. Also played Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. I have put about another 10 or 12 hours into that as well. That I played it originally on PSP. I don't believe I beat it. One of my friends, it's like one of his favorite games, the PSP version. Okay. And he's like, isn't sure if he wants to get this version because they changed the voice actor for Zack. And
they completely changed the game too. Like, I know a lot of stuff is different in this.
Yeah, and so I think I agree with him. The new voice actor for Zack fucking sucks. He's such a fuckboy, like annoying piece of shit. He really makes me not want to play as him. It kind of sucks.
That sucks.
Also, another RPG that doesn't have traditional leveling system. This one's all dependent on this slots system. So basically, it's RNG to level your stuff, level up your materia, level up your character. It's just if the slots during the course of a battle hit certain numbers, you'll level, and you have gained enough XP, which is a hidden stat. You don't know if you've gained enough XP to level. It hasn't a chance to occur in battle. It's not good.
Yikes.
It's not good.
That doesn't seem very
it's
fun.
It's not fun. It sucks. It sucks. So, here I am.
Well,
with two RPGs that I should have liked, but were not what I was looking for.
Well, that's because like I never played the original because I didn't have a PSP, and this seemed appealing to me. Like, despite I know I watched some reviews that was talking about like, hey, a lot of this stuff hasn't aged great, like the side activities and things like that, which seemed lame. But like, I really liked the Final Fantasy VII remake, and so experiencing that story and learning more about this character, who again I didn't play the original game, like sounded appealing. but if the combat part of it isn't very fun.
Well, no, that's not true. The combat's fun. It's just the you don't have control over the leveling to the degree that would be good.
But doesn't that impact the types of things that you can do, like the moves you can use?
No, not really. That's more tied to materia that you find. You level up the materia also randomly, which makes it more powerful, but it's not necessarily gating your ability to do stuff, just how powerful it is. And your HP is more just tied to like base stats stuff. Your level is more tied to HP and base stats.
All right. Well, that one will stay on my maybe list then.
Yeah, I think it's a maybe. It's a thing I might boot up every now and then to play a little bit, because it also is, it's a PSP game. It was made to be played in a mobile setting, so it's all pretty bite sized.
Right. Yeah. Well, cool. Let's wrap this part up with some High on Life.
Yeah.
So I am not a Justin Roiland fan. You are.
Well.
And I thought you were like a big Rick and Morty fan.
Yeah, I mean, it got to be too much, though, Like, it's too much of the same thing. And the same way that Family Guy stopped being funny after a while. It's like, yeah, all right, I get it. You're doing the thing. I get it. Okay.
The biggest framing of that is, like, in my opinion, that's whether or not you'll like this game. Like,
totally.
Do you like Justin Roiland's humor? Then you'll probably have a good time. Do you not? Then there's nothing for you here. Because it, as a video game, take the writing out of it, as a video game, like, it's an early PS3 game. There's nothing modern about its structure, its combat, the shooting mechanics, the types of weapons you use. Everything is very paint by numbers and very, like, video game 101 style. It's make or break based upon if you think this shit's funny or not.
Yeah.
I can't stand Rick and Morty. I think it's anti-humor. I still wanted to give this a fair shake, because I have heard of people that aren't super into Rick and Morty, but like still think this was pretty funny because it's a different type of medium. So I like went in with a fully blank slate and immediately was like, I physically was cringing by so many of the characters.
Oh, jeez, Rick.
It's so bad, and it also.
You're gonna put that gun up where, Rick?
Yeah, Marty, I'm gonna put the gun up my dick, Rick.
Yeah, it's
it's that.
Yeah,
for 12 hours.
That's the thing. Like, I played it for a few hours today. I started it and played it for a few hours today. I feel like it's a game that should be played in 1 hour increments over the course of a few weeks to finish.
Even if you like that style, I imagine for most people,
is nonstop.
Playing it for multiple hours at a time does not sound like an ideal way to
do not relent.
Comedy. Yes. And to its credit,
there's a lot of funny shit. You can
change I think I chuckled like twice.
Yeah, there's some funny shit in there. The problem is it doesn't know when to shut up. And so sometimes there's funny shit, but you're just like overloaded with it and then don't find it funny.
To its credit, there is a setting where you can like reduce the amount of idle banter that
happens,
a verbosity meter.
Yeah.
But unless you set it to off, it's still too much in my opinion. So yeah, I was bummed, not because I had great expectations of it, because even in trailers and gameplay demos, you can tell that the actual video game part of it is not particularly interesting. Yeah. I love the design of it.
Like, I like the way it looks too, yeah.
It's like the fidelity of it is not that high, and I don't even know that the creativity visually is that high, but it's good enough and colorful enough that I like being in the spaces.
I agree.
But again, navigating them like straight up, and it's not hyperbolic. Like, it literally plays like a PS3 game, in every single facet. And like I've seen a lot of people online of like, isn't it so cool how you have the alternate firing modes? And I'm like, dude, how many video games do you play that you think that is a cool thing? Like, are you fucking kidding me?
That is a man who plays FIFA, and that is it.
Yeah, 100%. So again, like for those people, it makes more sense why they're more into it as a video game beyond just the humor. But like, also you shouldn't respect that person's opinion about the gameplay because they don't know what they're talking about. So it doesn't take anything away from their fun, but like don't listen to that person's opinion if you know you have played a video game since 2008. So yeah, I was bummed with my experience because I genuinely wanted to enjoy it. And I did not.
Yeah, like I think I'll finish it. I'm enjoying it.
It's not long.
No, and I'm enjoying it enough.
Well, I guess for a first-person shooter, it's a little long. But for like a quote-unquote open world game, which it technically isn't, but it's on the shorter side.
Yeah. So I think I'll probably beat it. I'm enjoying it enough, and I'm laughing at enough intervals that it's like, I'm gonna be smart, like I was with God of War, and I'm not gonna overload myself with it all at once. Yes. I'm gonna play it an hour and a half to 2 hours every few days until it's done.
I think that is a good approach. So that was 2022. Yeah.
There were some good games.
What games did you like? What games did you enjoy? So, I mean, as you can tell, a lot of this was Kyle talking because he played way more games than me. Like, I am nowhere near a place where I feel good putting together a like ranked order list of video games because I played so few of them and my backlog from 2022 is so long. The only thing I know is that God of War is at the top. Like, I can't imagine a universe where I will play another game from 2022 that will beat God of War unless something insane happens with my experience with Elden Ring, where it totally blows the doors open to that style of game in a way that I did not expect. Otherwise, it's God of War Ragnarok for me, baby. And like Cult of the Lamb will be high on a list. Stray will be on a list. That's probably the only other ones I know for sure. Yeah, that's kind of where I am. What about you?
Yeah, I think God of War would absolutely be up there. Tinykin, Vampire Survivors, Cult of the Lamb. I feel like I'm cheating if I say Last of Us Part 1, but that.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want, man. When I looked at like previous years, I had the Mass Effect Legendary Collection on one of my top 10s.
I mean, that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 campaign was really good. I think that would make it onto some kind of a list. Live Alive was just such a pleasant surprise for me.
Nice.
I really had no concept of what to expect going into it. And it just was full of charm and such an interesting, different style of different way in which to engage with an RPG like that. And then, I hesitate to put Elden Ring on that list, but I really just for the joy of the exploration alone, I think it would have to make it on there. Just
it seems like there's enough going on.
Despite my misgivings, with my personal experience with it, I think just the highs that I had exploring that and finding areas and talking to people about it, I think kind of outweigh those in my mind looking back on it now.
Mm-hmm. What about Scorn? We didn't dive terribly deep on Scorn because we'll mention why towards the end of the episode here. But like, it seems like you were enjoying your time with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a weird one to say you like, though.
Sure.
Just because it is so... It's just unsettling at every moment.
Right. It's not trying to be fun.
No. I feel like I won't have complete thoughts on Scorn until I've beaten it, I don't think. I need to see where it goes and how its strange semblance of a narrative progresses.
Yeah. Well, you can expect a full top 10 from me probably by January 2024 for my top 10 of 2022. There are just so many games that I know I want to get to that I will. Because I ticked a bunch of fucking boxes on 2020 and 2021 games over the past 2 years. Yeah. So I will get to everything. It just won't be in the negative 2 days since this episode has been posted in order to make it in 2022.
Right.
Well, okay. I had a joke prepared for the news segment where I was going to say, all right, now let's dive into all the big news stories that have happened since September 2019. But given that we are well over 3 hours on this podcast, it isn't even worth setting up that joke because no one would want that to happen anyway. This is where the news would go in our podcast framework.
If I had one!
But like in reality, like there are ongoing large industry news stories like, you know, Microsoft's acquisition of Activision. Like those are things we will talk about as there are updates that are relevant to talk about. But December is like arguably the most dead month of video game news. Yeah. So there's not really that much to talk about. The biggest thing that happened was the Game Awards, which we'll talk about a little bit here. Again, given the length of this episode, we have a full, huge list of like the 2023 releases, even to far beyond those releases of things we're looking forward to. In the spirit of time, it probably makes sense we can call out a couple each of games that we're super hyped about. I know for me, like we mentioned a little bit already, but Dead Space coming out at the end of January. Totally. I am somehow more excited for it given the bad reception to Callisto Protocol.
Yeah.
Because like I just want there to be a good new Dead Space. Hogwarts Legacy is a little bit of a tough one.
Yeah.
I continue to get like worse and worse feelings
healthy dose of
about
skepticism.
That game. As a video game, I think.
Right.
Like as a fanboy getting to be in Hogwarts and sort myself into Ravenclaw and explore the castle, like all of that I'm sure will be awesome and the fan service will be fantastic. But the parts of it as a video game I am becoming less and less excited about.
I think so too.
What else, man? What else is on this list? We have like 40 fucking games on this list.
We mentioned it earlier, but Atomic Heart, it's like Soviet BioShock, but even more crazy and wild. I've been following that game for a very long time, like just gobbling up.
They announced it in like 2015.
I know, just gobbling up every possible trailer I can, and it feels like it has come a very long way from those kind of like initial trailers.
I'm nervous about that game. It just feels like one of those where I have a hard time trusting that it will deliver on what the trailers make it look like.
Yeah.
Because it's a small team. I know they've been working on it forever, but like I equate that game with like the Metro series, which I love the Metro series, but this game seems so much more ambitious than the Metro games. And that's just what makes me nervous about it. Like that, I want to be excited, but I'm more nervous than I am excited.
Yeah, I think I've just accepted the fact that it's going to be a B tier game, and it's not going to be perfect in some ways, but I'm going to try and just appreciate the quirky insanity that is in it. I think like The Day Before is one that, talking about being skeptical. Like, this is from a small dev studio. This has been floating around on Steam and some like Reddit stuff for a little while now. It borrows the Last of Us font, and it's basically an MMO open world, sort of like The Division, but with more crafting and looting. It's a zombie shooter kind of thing, but it looks incredible from a graphics fidelity, animation side. It's just like the things that they show, you don't see a lot of UI, you don't see a lot of the back end stuff that's happening, so you wonder how scripted it is and all that other stuff, like how they're managing to render these huge cities and these massive buildings and environments in, like what do the seams look like on it, you know what I mean? And like the company has done vaporware before, like a little worried about the actual existence of this one, but it's one that I'm following just to kind of see what it is, because if they can deliver on the promise, obviously it would be incredible. Do I think they will? Probably not, but the day before, I think it's worth looking at and being aware of, at least.
I have a huge amount of hype for Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I loved the first game for what it was. Like, it had some deficiencies, and primarily just like the sort of conglomeration of different video games and just like stealing ideas like from Dark Souls, for example, where like as a total package it was better than the individual parts. But I found what's the character's name? It's probably not good that I can't remember his name. Cal Kestis, thank you. I loved his character. I am getting more into Star Wars now. Since the sequel trilogy came out, had been so down on Star Wars because those movies fucking suck by and large. But like The Mandalorian, I'm not as into as a lot of people, but it's still great.
Obi-Wan had good moments.
Obi-Wan was
it had good moments.
I thought I was really bummed by that show.
There was an okay amount of payoff between Obi-Wan and Anakin.
That is true. It was worth it.
It was worth it.
Let's say.
Andor, one of the best shows I've seen in a very long time.
I'm halfway through Andor, and I have heard people talk about it the way that you are. Dude. I'm not seeing that yet. However, I am really liking it. It's mostly a Cassian Andor problem where I don't find him to be that interesting of a character. But all of the set dressing around it, all of the stuff that's going on where you're learning more about the Imperial structure, all the stuff with Mon Mothma. Like, I just finished the arc where they go on the mission to steal the shit from the base. That was all fucking badass.
So cool.
So, like, point being, there's more good Star Wars shit happening that's like getting me more excited about Star Wars, and so I'm more excited about Jedi Survivor as well. From a like, I want to know what the story is. I'm more excited for the story than I expected that I was going to be. Two quick ones on the DLC front: Horizon Forbidden West Burning Shores. I got every ounce out I could out of Forbidden West, as I mentioned. Too much, I would argue. I should have not done as much as I did. However, the whatever the DLC was in the first one, Frozen Wilds, I thought was great. It was a great change up on the structure of the first game with lots of new enemy types, a cool side story. So if they're able to do that again, takes place in Hollywood, I'll get pretty excited about that. And then Cyberpunk, Phantom Liberty. We don't have time to talk about Cyberpunk 2077 here today. That game is one of the biggest bummers of my video game life because of the technical side of that game.
Yeah.
That game would be very high on my favorite games ever list if it wasn't for the technical parts of that game.
Right.
But that stuff, it wasn't even fixed because I played through it on PS5 when they did all the upgrades and it still ran like complete horseshit.
Cool.
So I can't even look past that even now. However, I'm excited for Phantom Liberty. I'm very excited to have an excuse to go back
me too.
into that world.
God, I love Keanu Reeves. Dead Island 2 is supposed to release in 2023. That's a bit of a meme, Dead Island 2 floating around.
Yeah.
But, with how disappointing I was in Dying Light 2, maybe there's a little bit of Dead Space remake energy floating around in Dead Island 2. A little kind of redeem the genre for me a bit.
Yeah.
So there's always hope.
Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I did not love Breath of the Wild.
Me neither.
I'm in the 1%, as are you. That game had so many things I loved about it, but the systems around how you engage with the world, I thought were
stamina,
objectively bad.
Climbing in the rain.
Yeah. And that really
fast.
bums me out. The food crafting, like, there were a lot of, and even just the temples, many of them were so poorly done because there are so many of them.
Yeah. The gyroscope ball puzzles.
There was too much stuff in that game that made it not fun to play.
Yeah.
That I put a ton of time. I put like over 20 hours into it.
Me too. I probably played 40 hours.
Dude, just hard bounced.
Yep.
And like, no, I'm just done. I'm not going back to this.
Yeah.
So like mentioning it here because it is arguably the most anticipated launch of any game currently announced. But I don't know, dude. And given the fact that the Switch is a useless piece of technology these days in terms of how it can run games, I don't know. I doubt I'll play it.
I won't.
I doubt I'll play it. And that kind of sucks.
I made the commitment not to play my Switch again because it sucks so bad. I made that commitment to myself.
Yeah. Looking at the rest of this list, there are a lot of things that jump out that I am not excited about. Like that years ago I would have been, but given the state of the gaming industry today, like Final Fantasy 16, Suicide Squad, Dragon Age, like games that I would have been excited about, but I just have no faith anymore. Yeah. I have no faith in BioWare.
I'm worried about Starfield.
I have no faith in like live service games. Okay. I'm not worried about Starfield because I know what it's going to be. It's going to be Skyrim in space. And that inherently is disappointing, but I'm still going to love it for what it is. But I'm not hyped about it.
My thing is
I'm not worried about it.
The Bethesda games always have a little bit of whimsy to them.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's the part that I connect with and love. And I haven't seen any of that in what they've shown of Starfield so far.
Right.
So
right.
I need to see that DNA before I'll feel good about it.
I think that is absolutely fair given what we have seen. Given their history, I think it's reasonable to assume that there's still going to be weird shit in it. So. Like it's not going to be super vanilla and toned down. Because I 100% agree with you. Like if it's just a straight-laced space explorer thing, like their storytelling chops are not where they need to be in order to do that type of thing.
Right.
They need to have some fun.
Yeah. I'm also worried about Stalker 2. Because not that I don't think they can do it, because I love those first Stalker games, but I'm worried because obviously, they're based in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So
and like most of their dev team is currently fighting in a war.
Yeah,
right
one
now.
of their developers died in the war against Russia. Yep. So it's like, fuck. It's like, not that I don't believe they can do it, but it's like, fuck, man.
Yeah. I would put in the same vein of this like I can't work up excitement for it given the track record and current state of things. Diablo 4.
Yeah.
Activision is such a shit show in the way that they launched Diablo Immortals and what I've seen of Diablo 4 and people talking about how that game is coming together. It seems like no.
Mm-hmm.
And like Redfall is another example of like, granted, because that's Arcane, right? And I have played every Arcane game. I have liked 0 of them, and that makes me so sad. Like I've played both Dishonored games. I played Prey. I played.
I'm surprised you didn't like Prey.
The enemies move too fast, and the combat feels too slow. It just wasn't fun to engage with, fighting enemies. The setting stuff and like the clear inspiration like from BioShock, etc. Like that stuff's great. Love the setting, love the vibe, but playing the game, it was not.
Unfortunately, fun. Redfall won't have any of that. Well, hardly any.
Well, true. And what's the most recent one? The time loop.
Oh, Deathloop.
That game sucks.
That game fucking sucks.
It sucks.
I know that's probably not a super popular opinion. I hated that game.
No, but I think it's super mixed. Like it's very binary. Like people really loved it or people really hated it, and I hated it.
It was just
and like what I've seen. Like, granted, part of my non-interest in Redfall is because it's co-op, and I just don't play a lot of those co-op games because I don't have friends. But like the vibe of it feels so neutered. Like it just doesn't look interesting.
Yeah.
it just feels like I've played that game 80 times already. And I feel that way about a lot of these games that we're talking about here. Yeah. And that's part of what is making my malaise to video games go higher and higher. However, there are 2 other games on this list that I will specifically call out that I am extremely excited for.
House Flipper 2.
The first, absolutely. House Flipper 2. Nailed it. The first is Marvel Spider-Man 2.
Oh, sure.
And that isn't an excitement because I think it's going to be the next big thing. I know it's going to be more of what I love from the first Spider-Man and from Miles Morales, but I fucking loved the first Spider-Man and Miles Morales. So it's possible that it comes out and it's like Horizon Forbidden West, where there isn't enough new and interesting. That's possible, but I know it's going to be a good video game, and that isn't something you know about a lot of video games these days.
Yeah.
The other one was a huge surprise that it's going to exist. And that's Hades 2. That first game, holy shit. All of the expectations in the world that were set up for that game, and it smashed all of them. That game is so fun. I do not like roguelike games, much to the point of Cult of the Lamb, where I didn't engage with that until I had to. Like, I don't like that style of game. It is so addicting. And the characters are so awesome, and the way the story works, even when you die, you actually feel like you're moving forward, which is so important for me in a roguelike. I'm crazy hyped for it because it was completely out of nowhere. Like, Super Giant have never made a sequel before. And what's funny is before Hades, all of their games I have appreciated more than I have enjoyed. Like Bastion, I have so much respect for that game. I didn't like it that much. Oh crap! What was the one with the like basketball game? What was that game called?
What?
It's it was like the RPG, but it has like a basketball.
Oh, you played this?
Yeah, fuck. What was that game called?
Yeah,
like I keep wanting to call it Prey, and it wasn't.
No.
I'm on their website right now. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm calling them Super... Wait, did I call them Supermassive?
No, you said Supergiant.
I meant... Okay, I typed in Supermassive. I meant Supergiant. All right, well, you talk about... You got anything else on the list while I look this up?
Yeah, so we're still waiting to get the drop on that Last of Us multiplayer game. The multiplayer from original Last of Us, I think, was really fascinating. Like, that is a multiplayer that I think I would actually play a competitive multiplayer in. Like,
yeah.
An expansion on those concepts from the first game where, like, you would get resources from the match and take it back to your colony, and it was all kind of menu based. But an expansion on that, like a real physical space that you're like, so you're going in and, you know, making it sort of like a Tarkov, like, where you're going in and securing these resources and bringing them back out and building up your colony or whatever, and maybe there's some PvE elements involved as well. I think could be really, really, really interesting.
Yeah,
I think that could be super cool. And, you know, the possibility for, you know, maybe it's not necessarily all competitive. Maybe there's also a cooperative element to it as well.
Right.
I
hope
maybe
so.
Like, instead of clans, you have like the colonies are like literally made of all real people who join as like a clan, and, you know, certain people can go out and do missions and other stuff like that.
Yeah, co-op stuff where just against zombies, against AI.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
You know, go do like resource gathering kind of stuff and help build up a base together and all that other kind of stuff. I think could be really cool. But I have no idea what kind of game this is going to be when it comes out, because they haven't really released anything like that. But, you know, I think there's a whole world of possibilities, and I am levying all of my desires and expectations on it ahead of time, because that's the smart thing to do. That's how you set yourself up to be happy.
Yes, absolutely. When you've seen nothing, assume the best possible thing about it.
Absolutely.
Super smart. No, but I am with you. Like, the... Shit, what was the one called from The Last of Us? What was that multiplayer called?
I cannot remember.
But yeah, that was way better than it had any right to be. The multiplayer in the Uncharted games was way better than they had any right to be. So
they have a track record.
I mean, Naughty Dog, despite what my personal feelings on the story of Last of Us Part 2, as a video game, it's still very good. Like, I have a lot of faith in them to do something interesting with this multiplayer game. My only trepidation is the fact that it is a multiplayer game.
Yeah.
And if it's mostly or solely focused on competitive, I know that I'm not going to play it a lot. And that will be a bummer. But again, people, not every game needs to be made for me.
Yeah.
I want the developers that I like to make games that I like.
Yeah, I just like,
Is
they've
that too
been
much to
working
ask?
on this for a really long time, supposedly, and that equates to a lot of money. And with a name like The Last of Us, there has a potential to be an absolutely massive player base. And they are known for their single-player experiences, so they have to know through the concepting phase and the storyboarding or whatever you call it, like, they have to know that there's a large portion of their audience that they get for normal Last of Us that is not going to be interested in a competitive multiplayer game,
Right.
Like, so hopefully that's a part of, offering that alternative for different kinds of players who are looking for different kinds of experiences.
Going back briefly to the Supergiant thing, the game was Pyre, which is funny because it's an anagram of prey, which is what I kept wanting to call it. But again, Pyre was a game that I did like, but I wanted to like it more than I did. Transistor's another example. I've probably, other than Hades, I think I like Transistor the most, but I wanted to like it more than I did. Hades is a fantastic game. I never beat it because I'm not particularly good at it. I always ended up getting my ass kicked on, I probably died to Hades 10 times before I was able to beat him, and then I continued to die to him forever. But anyway, I'm very excited for Hades 2, not just because Hades was a great game, but also the fact that they're making a sequel means that they've got really good ideas.
Yeah.
Because they don't normally do that. I mean, every game they've made has had similar elements, especially in terms of the tone and the visual style, but the gameplay has been vastly different across all of them. So, yeah, the fact that they're making a sequel makes me excited for the sequel.
Sure.
Anything else?
There's
we
small
talked about
stuff,
there were too many things on this list, and then we ended up talking about most of them anyway. The sore thumb that stands out here is Forspoken.
Oh yeah,
and I say that because it comes out soon, and I played the demo. Did you play the demo?
I did not.
I did not have a single ounce of fun playing that demo.
I heard people who have played more than the demo. They have said that the demo was a bad demo.
I have also heard that. However, the tone of the game sucks.
It seems like there is less that is the reason people don't like the demo for the most part, is the writing and the tone and that vibe. It seems like
that is one of the reasons I didn't like the
That's
demo.
one of the largest vocal
I have
reasons
12 other reasons.
Yeah. It seems like that is not as prevalent as people perhaps are led to believe through the demo.
That's fair. Because the tone in both directions. So the main character and the little gauntlet, I found both characters to be exceedingly annoying, combined with the flat nothingness of the world style. It's so generic. And again, it's a demo, but they also did a really bad job. There's no context for what you're doing and why in the demo. So I'll give a little bit of grace because of that. But the gameplay, which everything's, in my opinion, seemed to hinge on because of the inventiveness of the magic combat and all the variety and switch. I found it extremely tedious to change the magic abilities. And the enemy AI is worse than the enemy AI in High on Life. It's the dumbest. They just stand there and let you hit them forever. Really, really bad experience with the demo. That a game I was already on the fence on because of what it seemed like the tone was. This completely turned me off. So we'll see, man. Maybe reviews come out and they're like, hey, in smaller doses, the tone isn't that bad. With more context, the magic works better. The story works at all. But yeah, that demo like was a hard unsell for me on that game.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see some actual like coverage of it once it releases.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think that's a podcast.
Yeah.
What do you think? 3.5 hours later.
Yeah. We want to touch on the Scorn thing?
Yes. Yeah. So what we want to do, again, in the spirit of switching things up on this podcast here, and the fact that we're going monthly, each month we're going to set up at least a game that we're both committed to playing, not finishing, but both committed to playing, so that we have some relevant things to talk about. Obviously, there's going to be other stuff, right? Like we talked through 2022 where there were a few overlapping games, mostly like we play different stuff. We're different people. It is what it is. But we want to at least have a game every month that's relevant that we can both talk about. So in January, I'm committed to checking out Scorn. Kyle's committed to playing more Scorn, maybe finishing it, maybe not. So look forward in the February episode. We'll be talking more deeply about that game. Dead Space also comes out at the end of January.
Yeah, the very end of the month. So I will certainly be playing quite a bit of it. I don't know how much time, Shea, you'll have before we record the podcast.
I will have purchased it. I will have bought that video game. Can't promise that I will have started it yet. It really just depends on if there's a good evening in between it releasing and us doing the podcast for me to at least start it. But there's no way I'll have more than a couple hours. But yeah, we'll have some early thoughts on Dead Space. And then I have a huge laundry list. And now, I just finished God of War just like 2 weeks ago, like completed what I wanted out of it. So now I've got a ton of fucking time on other video games. So I've been experimenting, like, Trek to Yomi, checked out High on Life. I've got a huge laundry list of small games. I also intended on booting up Far Cry 6 this evening after finishing the podcast. However, this podcast took us 3.5 hours to make, and it is closing in on 12:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I will not be starting Far Cry 6 tonight.
Nope.
But I will start it before the next podcast. Because I played and enjoyed Far Cry 3, started Far Cry 4, and burnt out because of having played Far Cry 3, and that's it. Did not play 5, did not play New Dawn.
Right.
Did not play Primal. So, like, I'm raring to go for a new Far Cry. I know this game has a lot of negative reactions to it, given the tone and just the sameness of it. But the, like, turn off my brain and play a first-person shooter open world game, like, I'm up for that. So it's a good time for me to start it. But, so yeah, there's some of what you can expect next month. Obviously, we'll cover any big news things that happen, additional games that we check out. Maybe we'll have a topic or two that we can dive into. But that's going to do it for this podcast.
Woo!
Although we will end as we always used to end, and will continue to end with something we don't hate, because it's such a nice vibe to end the podcast with. So today I don't hate that we're doing this thing again, man. This is fun. This was way longer than I intended.
Way longer.
And it's going to suck to edit it this weekend to publish it in time. But this is fun. I'm glad to be doing this again. And I feel such less pressure to play certain games on a certain time, to have the news stories every other week. I think that the monthly is the way to go.
I think so too.
I'm excited.
Well, today I don't hate the day-to-day cadence of my life right now. I feel I have a good work-life balance in that I don't have a lot of work to do. So I get to play a lot of games.
So it's not a balance. It's like a heavily weighted into life.
Hey, it's my kind of balance, baby.
Right. That's balance for you.
Yeah, it is my kind of imbalance. It is terrific.
That's nice.
It is nice. It won't last very long, but it is nice.
Hey, you got to enjoy it while you can. Well, cool. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Return listeners, thanks for coming back. New listeners, thanks for checking us out. As I mentioned at the top, you can find us wherever podcasts can be found, including now Spotify or Samsung podcasts, as the cool kids listen
chosen few
to podcasts. But yeah, feel free to send us an email if you got topics, responses, feedback, etc. info@SheaHatesEverything.com. And we will be back. Shit, I wrote down the date.
January 6th.
That is not correct.
Yeah, that's the first.
Because this episode...
No, sorry, February 6th.
Thank you. Yes. Because, yes, we are not going to release another episode
back
5
to back,
days
baby.
after this. Yes, February 6th will be the next episode. So please subscribe, leave us a rating, tell your friends if you had fun. I promise all of the episodes won't be 3.5 hours long, unless you like that. And then
I don't
That's
like
too
that.
long. My throat hurts.
Yeah, mine too. I haven't done this in a while, man.
All right, folks. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we will see you in February. Peace out.